Stand by for terminal count.
Overlook Horizon High Altitude Balloons, an Ontario County nonprofit.
This is no ordinary balloon.
What a view!
Over 110,000 feet.
This is incredible.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch.
Hey guys, good morning. Tori here from Overlook Horizon, coming to you live Friday morning here, March 8th, for the SpaceX DM-1 mission. This is the deorbit burn and splashdown. We did undocking a little bit earlier this morning. The hatch was closed yesterday, and now this morning here, they're actually going to go and bring this capsule back to Earth after just under a week in space. Spent 5 days at the International Space Station, and now we're going to hit that deorbit burn here in just about an hour, and then splashdown will be at about an hour and it's about an hour and 25 minutes from now. So 8:45 a.m. Eastern time will be splashdown. The coverage for this is going to start. It's going to start fairly soon from NASA, and SpaceX starts at 7:30. So in about 9 minutes, they're going to start coverage. We're going to check it out. We'll watch along and see what's going on. And we'll see what they have in store. I'm not sure what they have for imagery or video footage that we're going to have for splashdown or the deorbit. They did have the undocking, and obviously there's video footage of that, which we'll take a look at. We'll do some replays of that. Just trying to debate on whether or not to cover the undocking part or the splashdown part. I figure we cover splashdown, and then we can watch some replays of the undocking, hatch closure, things like that. But hello to everybody. I see a bunch of people over on YouTube. We got some people watching on Periscope, a couple on Facebook and Twitch as well. So good morning to everybody, or good afternoon or good day, wherever you happen to be watching us this morning. Happy Friday to everybody. So what I want to jump into here, a couple of things. We'll dive right into it. We'll watch, we're going to get a replay of the undocking here, but one thing that a lot of people had asked me about over the last couple of days is they wanted to know, is the Space Kirby going to make it back to Earth, or is it going to stay on the International Space Station? So Space Kirby, which they've been calling Little Earth, but I like our name better. I like Space Kirby. Anyways, the little Space Kirby, this is the zero-G indicator here that took the ride up on the Crew Dragon, just to indicate when the Crew Dragon, visually indicate when the Crew Dragon reached zero-G after the engine shut off. But that will not be making the trip back to Earth. That they brought back onto the International Space Station. It's going to stay there, and it's going to be a permanent resident now for the International Space Station, at least in terms of the immediate future here. Who knows if maybe Anne McClain brings it back when she comes back, or another, maybe the first the DM-2 astronauts that fly on the Crew Dragon, maybe they bring it back in the future. Who knows? Nobody knows. But for now, at least for today, it is not coming back. Somebody said my green screen is moving. Oh yeah, it came unclipped. I got one side that came unclipped. So I guess I'll have to try not to shake and jiggle around so much. Anyways, let's see. What else? All right, so sorry, I got off track there. But yeah, so Space Kirby is gonna stay up there on the space station. And so what I want to actually show here real quick before they actually get into it, let me full screen this, and then we'll switch over to this monitor here. Before NASA restarts their coverage, we'll take a look at, this is the hatch closure procedure that they went through. This was yesterday about noon Eastern time. It was about 1700 UTC. So yesterday they went through the hatch closure, took a whole bunch of pictures. You actually saw a lot of people some people were excited, some people were disappointed about the Space Kirby, because Space Kirby was back in the capsule. They thought, well, maybe they're going to put him back in. He's going to take the ride down. It took a whole bunch of pictures. I'm going to jump forward through this because they took a lot of pictures. Let's see. We'll get to the end of the photos here. Photography session. Where is it? All right, there we go. Then everybody exits the exits the capsule here, along with Space Kirby. There he goes. He's out. He's heading back to the space station. But Ripley is coming back. Ripley has not moved since she docked to the space station, really since she launched. There's Space Kirby coming back through the international docking adapter back to the space station. But yeah, Ripley has stayed right in her seats since launch, hasn't moved at all. She will be making the trip down with all her sensors, neck, spine, head, all that kind of stuff, so that the SpaceX and the NASA teams can evaluate and see what kind of forces she got put through. Now, the big thing that they'll be looking at, and the big milestone that they still have yet to come to get through, is going to be the reentry. So obviously, docking went well, launch went well. As far as we know, there could certainly be little minor things that they may want to tweak here and there, but from our standpoint, everything appears to have gone well. But reentry is the big one, and that is because the shape of the capsule. So it's shaped a little bit irregularly with the Super Draco engines, those abort engines that are on the sides towards the aft section of the capsule. They're a little bit of an irregular shape, and so they've run lots and lots of simulations on reentry and aerodynamics, but there's still a little bit of a question mark as to how those will perform in the real world. So that will be the big thing that is to watch today. If we can, we're not going to actually probably see the actual reentry and how it performs, but that'll be the big thing that they'll keep an eye on from a telemetry standpoint as to how it performs while it's coming back to Earth during that reentry interface. And then here's the actual hatch closure here. Nice and slow. They bring it in, and then they kind of twist the little handle there to get it sealed up. And then during hatch closure here, so they closed it all up. Got everything sealed. Then they had to close the inner hatch of the international docking adapter. They had to depressurize that little section that's in the middle there. That way they could undock gracefully and not explosively. So they depressurize that, get it back down to a vacuum. Then they would do the undocking. They closed the forward hatch of the docking ports there, which is where the space shuttle used to dock as well. So the space shuttle used to dock there, and they added the international docking adapter onto the end of it to fit the Boeing Starliner and the Crew Dragon. So yeah, here's going through hatch closure here. But timeline-wise, I think we had mentioned this earlier, but just in case you missed it right at the beginning, the deorbit burn is coming up at 7:50, I believe. So that's in about 20 minutes from now. They'll do the deorbit burn. And then at, I believe, entry interface starts, I want to say it's 8:33. These are all Eastern times. Hello, there we go. All right, so there's our advertisement now. We can cut back to advertisement at the end of my video. So there was that was the hatch closure, and then where's my undocking here? We'll take a look at that real quick before we get too far and before NASA and SpaceX start their coverage. So there, we'll put that there, and then we'll switch back over here. All right, so this was undocking. The actual undocking happened just a couple of hours ago. That was at about 2:30 a.m. Eastern time this morning. So that was about 5 hours ago that the actual undocking happened here. So nice and slow and graceful, just the way it's supposed to be. Pretty much the opposite video of what we looked at earlier, earlier being 5 days ago when the actual docking took place. But there it is, backing away. So the undocking happened, like I said, 5 hours ago. You can actually see the inner hatch there with the big handle all sealed up. That will back away slowly, and then it did a couple of departure burns to get it further away from the space station and into an area where then it can actually perform its deorbit burn, the actual big deorbit burns. Now you've got the capsule, and then on the back you've got the trunk that is going to be that's going to be jettisoned, and that will not return. That's not going to be reusable. That will burn up in the atmosphere. So it's just the capsule that's coming back. The back section there with the solar arrays and everything else, that's going to burn up. That's not coming back. A lot more difficult to try to stabilize the craft and bring that back than just the capsule. So likely even more expensive for them to try to bring it back than to just discard it and make a new one. So yeah, anyways, that's our deorbit, or I'm sorry, undocking that happened this morning. All right, so let's check out what you guys are all saying. Let's just say one cool on Periscope says, let's say it's a big day for Dragon demo. This is a big day. This is basically the conclusion here. Oh, and actually looks like SpaceX is starting their stream here. But this is basically the conclusion of the Crew Dragon mission here. That is going to, we're going to look for some parachute. Hopefully they have video of the parachutes coming out. Who knows? I'm not sure what they're going to be showing us this morning. But I'm excited to see it, excited for the conclusion here, because if all goes well, that's a green light to keep moving forward for the commercial crew program. We'll have in-flight abort coming up in May, and then maybe some crewed missions as early as July. It'll be fantastic.
Welcome to our live coverage of SpaceX's Demo-1 mission. If you're just joining us, Dragon has performed its final departure burns from the International Space Station and is on its way back home to us. Today's mission actually began back on March 2nd when Dragon launched from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Following that successful launch, Dragon arrived at the space station and docked with the orbiting lab on March 3rd. Dragon's return to Earth will mark the third completion of SpaceX's first demonstration mission for NASA's Commercial Crew program. While there are no astronauts on board Dragon today, this demonstration mission represents an important milestone as we approach our first crewed mission later this year. Earlier today, Dragon powered up from sleep mode and began its departure procedures and system checks.
That's right, and then the spacecraft autonomously undocked from the International Space Station at 11:32 p.m. Pacific time just yesterday on March 7th. I'm pretty sure it's March 8th now. We've been here all night. And then it began a series of departure burns to move away from the station. We're going to be bringing you live coverage of the rest of the mission from the moment that Dragon jettisons its trunk to the deorbit burn all the way to that splashdown, which we're targeting for 5:45 a.m. Pacific time, with Dragon scheduled to splash down about 230 statute miles east of Kennedy Space Center. One interesting historical note for you real quick. It's actually been nearly 50 years to the day since Apollo 9 was the last spacecraft built for humans to splash down in the Atlantic. It completed its mission back on March 13th, 1969.
It's true, this is an Atlantic
Big
splashdown.
day,
different than Cargo Dragon splash down in the Pacific.
Unfortunately, due to a communications blackout, we're not going to be able to show you every step of Dragon's journey home, but we're going to be bringing you live status updates as it goes through the phase of things like the deorbit burn and the trunk separation. And we've been getting some pretty great views from the recovery ships out there, so we should have good views of Dragon as it comes down towards the water.
Yeah. Now, in this next phase of the mission, Dragon has a series of steps to complete before it returns home. First, Dragon will jettison its trunk, like Dan just said, which is the cylindrical, unpressurized part of the spacecraft. We do this as the trunk is no longer needed to complete the mission.
Yeah, that's going to be coming up in about 15 minutes or so. And like we said, we can't show every part of this for the mission, but we are going to be listening to the flight control teams. Again, we have one here right behind us in Hawthorne, and they're the ones basically monitoring all of Dragon's systems just like they've been doing since it lifted off 6 days ago. It's flown by so far. It really has. But we're going to be listening in and giving you the updates as they come in.
Now, if you've been following along so far this morning, you might have seen us on the earlier webcast last night, this morning. It's hard to tell what time of day it is at this point. But you saw Dragon complete a series of burns. There were a number of departure burns away from the International Space Station that Dragon completed, which allowed the spacecraft to move further and further away from the station in a series of choreographed maneuvers. Everything went really well, and like we said, now we're just awaiting for that trunk separation. And after that, we'll have a pretty exciting deorbit burn and a splashdown. So we're looking forward to all that.
Yep. Yeah, at this point, the Dragon spacecraft is well below the International Space Station and quite a few kilometers ahead of it at this point. And that's just to make sure once that trunk's separated, it's not on the same orbital plane, basically, as the International Space Station is. So that'll be the next major milestone coming up. And then that deorbit burn, which we'll go through all of those times in just a little bit. But it's going to be about a 15-minute firing of those thrusters on Dragon. And that's just basically going to take it out of orbit. So it's going to fire these thrusters until that trajectory is basically pointing it right back down in the ocean, in the Atlantic, where we're landing a spacecraft built for humans for the first time in 50 years. So this is going to be a really exciting morning. And like I said, we'll be bringing you some pretty great views. The sun is up already over on the East Coast, so we'll have a nice daytime splashdown.
As someone who has seen this specific vehicle get built over the last couple of years, it's pretty incredible to, like I mentioned earlier in today's webcast, to actually see the astronauts on board the International Space Station floating in and out of the capsule as they were opening the hatch, and that was very exciting. And then upon the departure burns earlier, to see the imagery from the station as Dragon was leaving, it was just incredible. We had some amazing shots, and we've seen the artistic renderings for a couple of years now, what it would look like when Dragon was on station, and to finally see it was just a wonderful moment in terms of those of us that have had so many hours put into this spacecraft.
It almost didn't look real when
Yeah.
you see it, when you actually saw it flying out there. But I mean, since it departed, that happened early in the cruise day on board the space station, so they've since moved on to a bunch of other tasks. They actually woke up about an hour before Crew Dragon undocked, as they're operating on Greenwich Mean Time, so it was early in the morning for them. But they did offer some great words as Dragon undocked and flew away once it was outside of the approach ellipsoid, so about a kilometer or so away from the International Space Station. And as Kate said, it executed all of its departure burns. It executed 4 departure burns following that initial separation, basically taking it out in front and then up around and then finally out beneath the International Space Station, where it's now on its orbit awaiting this trunk separation and eventually the deorbit burn.
Yeah. So in terms of SpaceX history, this demonstration mission is incredibly important, as it's, like I said, the demonstration of our crew program. Interestingly enough, the Dragon spacecraft that's hanging behind me here in Hawthorne, California, SpaceX headquarters, is similarly the same demonstration mission of our cargo program that we've been operating for NASA for the last couple of years in terms of the cargo resupply missions to the International Space Station. So who knows if the DM-1 capsule will also be hanging behind us here in Hawthorne. I don't think we have the structural support for that, but in terms of what you see behind me, it's similar in terms of historical referencing for the importance of today's mission.
And that capsule actually already has another mission on the books for it. SpaceX is planning to use it in their ascent abort test coming a little bit later this year. That'll be between Demo-1, which we're about to wrap up today, and Demo-2, which will be the first flight that we actually have our astronauts on board that spacecraft. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the 2 NASA astronauts, will be the first ones to take Dragon into space. And the ascent abort, that will be a pretty cool test to see.
I wouldn't want to be involved with it because that's a lot of G-forces, but it'll be really important for us to be able to demonstrate the ability for the capsule to leave the vehicle in an urgent need to do so. So we're all looking forward to that test flight, as it's also something we've been working towards for the last couple of years. And yeah, that should be coming up in a couple of months here.
Yeah, and that'll be the second abort you guys have done, because you did a pad abort test already with a Dragon spacecraft. So basically just really putting the vehicle through all of the paces, all of these different abort tests, missions like this one right now, all ultimately with that goal of sending humans to the International Space Station on a Crew Dragon.
Yeah. Something else really interesting about today's mission, and in fact the commercial crew program going forward in terms of SpaceX's approach to landing the capsules, we are landing them in the Atlantic, like we mentioned earlier, whereas the cargo resupply mission Dragon capsules have all landed in the Pacific. So today is really exciting. We're really pumped to bring you footage of our recovery team as we pull Dragon out of the Atlantic Ocean. It's a lot of firsts today. It's been a lot of firsts all week, and to say the adrenaline has been pumping around here is an understatement.
Yeah, we even had a crowd earlier this morning behind us gathered down at the control, and there's
even more crowd.
Now. Yeah,
now it's big celebration at Splashdown
4:30 in the morning
time
here on the West Coast, but the crowd is already starting to gather here at SpaceX headquarters. But interesting note, normally those cargo dragons landing over in the Pacific. And while this vehicle ultimately designed for crew, it's also carrying some cargo. It carried about 400 pounds of cargo up to the International Space Station, and it's been packed with a little over 300 pounds for the return trip home. And that's broken out across a couple of different areas. One of the more interesting ones, and one of the ones NASA's really keen on, is it's bringing back what we call utilization, so some science samples. It actually has 2 bags. They're basically like coolers on board that are packed with these cold bricks that we're able to put science samples in. So the ones that are coming back home today using some of the human research projects on board the International Space Station is, we like to say, the astronauts are experiments themselves. We're always poking and prodding while they're up there just to see how the human body changes and reacts in microgravity. And a lot of the samples from a couple of those projects are coming home on Dragon today. Also bringing home a couple of radiation monitors, and one thing that our program manager, Kirk Shireman for the Space Station program, noted, it's also going to have a fan pump separator on it. And that's actually a piece, it's a piece of the spacesuits, the EMUs, the extravehicular mobility units. I'm from NASA, and we still use way too many acronyms. And it's a piece that actually failed on orbit some time back, and they're bringing it home to take a look at it. It was since replaced with a spare unit. And we do have some spacewalks coming up in March. So very busy time in space right now, but right now kind of all focused on watching this Dragon come home.
So the next milestone that we have coming up in about 7 minutes is the trunk separation. We will take a break for a few minutes while we await that, so stay tuned, and we'll see you in a couple.
All right, so a little update from SpaceX this morning. Sorry, I had to jump out for just a second. Oh, there we go. We got the music, the SpaceX music back. Got to turn it down. YouTube doesn't freak out about the music. But yeah, I jumped out for a second just to fix my screen behind me, see if I could get it to stop moving. But yeah, so looks like we're on schedule. It doesn't sound like there's any issues that they are currently investigating or looking into. But basically, starting at about 7:50 a.m. Eastern time, which is in about 8 minutes. Actually, they said the trunk separation or the trunk jettison would be a little bit sooner than that. So that's probably coming up here in like 5 minutes. They're going to do the trunk jettison, get rid of that because they're not bringing that back with them. That will burn up in the atmosphere. And that's going to be expendable. Not really any way around that. It's a lot less expensive to expend it and then let it burn up than it is to try to save that. And it's not, at the end of the day, it's not a huge percentage of the cost. I know a lot of people are really trying to get 100% reusable rockets, and we may get there someday. Maybe with the Starship / BFR could possibly be 100% reusable, but yeah, as of today, they're still not 100% reusable. So that trunk is headed out, and then the capsule obviously will come back. That's going to go through reentry, and that will parachute back. No propulsive landing. The Super Draco engines are likely capable of propulsive landings, but they are not doing that. They have no plans to do that at the moment. That was early plans in the early days, was to look at potentially doing a propulsive landing. So when I say that they're capable of doing it, I mean they're powerful enough to do it, but I don't believe they have any software in there to actually perform that action as of today. One thing that was interesting that somebody brought up a question, if you think back on the CRS-7 mission, where SpaceX had a stage 1 failure and lost the capsule and all the cargo and everything. That was a cargo resupply for the space station. One of the things that they had said at the time that they had since fixed was that in the event of some sort of failure and the capsule got separated, they did not, but they should have had some sort of software in place to command the parachutes to deploy, and they could have saved all the cargo from that failed CRS-7 mission. The rocket itself failed, the capsule separated and survived, and it ended up crashing into the ocean because the parachutes never deployed, and that's simply because they had never put in any software or any sort of contingency to say, hey, if this happens, let's put the parachutes out and bring it back home, and we'll recover it. But so anyways, where I was going with that is one of the questions that came up, and I don't think this is there, but I really have no idea. But is if something were to happen and the parachutes didn't open on the capsule, is there some sort of backup contingency that says, well, hey, if the parachutes fail for any reasons, fire the Super Draco engines and do a propulsive landing? I don't know the answer 100%. My feeling is no, that's not in place because they do have 4 parachutes on board, so a lot of redundancy there in terms of parachutes. So I don't think they would risk trying to add in engines firing into this whole landing process in case, because you put that in and then potentially they could accidentally fire if something was incorrect there. But I don't know. It's an interesting thought to think about. So let me go back and check out some of the comments here. I see a bunch of people checking out and saying hello. I see a Radaman from Toronto. Hello, Toronto. Somebody said I should throw a balloon up there and try to get footage. That would be really difficult to do, to try to get footage from a balloon. I mean, 1, you got to control the balloon and get it into the right area. 2, you got to stay out of the right area so you don't make somebody angry that you're flying things in the middle of their recovery area. And 3, in order for us to get video on the balloon, we have to recover the balloon. And this is happening way, way out in the ocean. Speaking of way out in the ocean, we could take a look and see where out in the ocean this is happening. So we keep talking about that this is happening in the Atlantic, which is absolutely true. Much different than the cargo Dragon or Dragon 1 that comes down and splashes down out in the Pacific. This is splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean. So what we're looking at here, this is the flight hazards map, which still has, it's the same map that we looked at almost a week ago that had all the launch hazards. So this line here, these are the launch hazards right by the launch pad. The orange area is where the autonomous spaceport drone ship caught the first stage booster. But really what we're interested today is this purple area. The purple area is the recovery hazard. And this is their expected landing area for the crew Dragon there. So you get kind of an idea on where it's coming down. You can also get an idea on the path it's going to take because it is actually going to fly over the United States. It's coming in this type of direction to fly over the United States and then actually do the landing over here. So obviously NASA has a risk assessment that they've done, and they feel confident and safe, and that's where it's coming down. All right, I see SpaceX is back. Let me jump back over to them.
For that trunk separation again. We are expecting to get that call just on the internal nets any moment now. That'll be the next major milestone, and then it'll be on to deorbit burn.
Exactly. So we should have that call out any minute now. As we wait for trunk separation, this is the last thing that Dragon has to do before it is able to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and splash down in the Atlantic Ocean.
That's right. Yeah, the trunk not coming home, but the rest of the Dragon capsule, the more important part, is going to be coming home. The other stuff that Dragon's going to do before it does that final reentry is close that nose cone, and we'll get through a little bit of that soon. But basically, that nose cone is going to protect that top part of the Dragon spacecraft, the docking adapter, and also the guidance and navigation and control sensors. So that's one of the last major milestones. That's another kind of departure from the cargo Dragon, which that nose cone gets jettisoned during the launch phase. But in keeping the crew, it helps usability of the Crew Dragon for future missions.
Now that trunk section is unpressurized, and we are able to use it to transport cargo on the way up to the International Space Station, but everything that comes back from station is put into the pressurized section. So we are able to jettison that trunk as it's no longer needed, and we're able to shed that extra weight.
And I think we just heard trunk separation.
All right, so hopefully we'll be able to bring you visual here shortly. Actually, no, we're too far away from station at the moment, so yeah.
Yep. So next up is going to be the spacecraft using some forward thrusters to perform the deorbit burn. This is going to be a really major step, because once that deorbit burn happens, you're coming home. You're leaving orbit and you're coming back to Earth.
Can't
and
wait.
that's going to put Dragon on a trajectory for that return. The burn will last about 15 minutes once it starts. So we're going to, again, continue to stand by. This is kind of the calm before the storm, if you will, where we're just waiting for things to really get into motion. Dragon's going to pretty soon do that deorbit burn. And then following that, it only takes about 45 minutes or so until it's in the water, down in the Atlantic, and ready to get picked up by the teams on the. So once again, we're going to continue to stand by. We're going to bring you these updates as they come in. But one more milestone down, just a few more to go, and then Dragon's home.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hopefully I should be back. Are we live? Are we back? Oh, my goodness. The problems of technical difficulties. So we'll see. We'll see if this comes back live. It should come back. Yeah, everybody says, and we're back. Okay. I don't know what happened there. All of a sudden, you know, every once in a while, my stream crashes, which is really unfortunate. My stream, meaning my streaming software, it hasn't happened in a really long time, but all of a sudden it just happened in the middle of that. When that happens, it will still continue to broadcast live, but I can't. Everything freezes. I can't touch anything, so my mic was muted. I couldn't turn the mic back on. It was frozen in place, and all I could do is just click OK on the error, and then it crashes everything, and I got to restart the whole thing. Ugh. Which is fine for YouTube and Facebook. For the people that were watching on Periscope, the broadcast just ends, and then you have to go find the broadcast again. But anyways, SpaceX has happened. They were doing some stuff, so I'm going to switch back over to that, and we'll see if we can get caught up and see if we can figure out what's going on here. Oh wait, we're back up to music here. So I'm going to rewind here a little bit. We can check on the stuff that we missed, because I missed it too.
We should be getting confirmation of the deorbit burn in a couple of seconds here.
That's right.
So we did
get. Once the deorbit burn is complete, it's just about. I'm trying to do quick math in my head as I look at everything, but it's just about 40 minutes or so until Dragon's scheduled to be back down in the water. So it's a pretty quick ride from being in outer space to being right back down in the ocean. And we just
had confirmation of the deorbit burn. So like we said, this will last about 15 minutes. So deorbit burn has begun. At this point, Dragon has begun to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. It's going to get a little toasty, but we're excited for this to happen, as it is the next step, the next milestone in its journey home.
That's right. And
now that entry interface is still like
ultimate destination
40
down in
minutes
the
away.
Atlantic Ocean, and there are boats standing by. We'll go through all the recovery forces and everything on site, but there is one main recovery boat. It's the Go Searcher. Mm-hmm. And that's going to have all of the SpaceX recovery teams who are responsible for actually going out and picking the capsule up out of the water. That is a view of the Go Searcher. This is actually a camera view from one of the other boats that's in the area, the Go Navigator, that has the combined NASA team on board as well. So once we actually have crew on board, everyone's going to be on one boat, so it'll be a little bit tighter quarters. But you'll have, obviously, the SpaceX people to go and recover the capsule, and then the NASA people typically also bring along the flight docs and the nurses. Anybody who's ever seen a landing in a Soyuz over in Kazakhstan is familiar with that. Once the crew comes home, after about a 6-month period, it's important we get a quick medical check out with them, just take the vitals, make sure they're doing okay, and help manage as they readapt to Earth's gravity for the first time in, up to 6 months or longer. So everyone will be on one boat, but for today we do have 2 boats, so we'll get some additional views, hopefully, from those different cameras as we get to watch Dragon come down. But for now, we are in that deorbit burn, so we got a couple more minutes until that is complete, and then we're one step closer to Dragon being back.
Yeah, so while Dragon is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, we're going to pause for a few minutes until the deorbit burn completes. So be sure to stick around, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
All right, so there was that's what we missed there. We're gonna go back to live now. So now we're back to a live view. It doesn't really look too much different. We're watching the control room, and so we're waiting here on the capsule to finish the deorbit burn. So deorbit burn is about 15 minutes long, and there's some live views from the recovery ships out in the Atlantic Ocean. So you got Go Navigator, which is the ship that the camera's on, and then Go Searcher is the ship that is actually doing the recovery. So that's the other ship that we're actually looking at there. So looks like a great view. We got a little bit of clouds, but not too much. So hopefully we get some great footage of the capsule actually landing. That would be fantastic to get some live footage of the capsule landing. That would be amazing. So that is not scheduled to happen until 8:45. So we still got about 45 minutes until the capsule lands. Entry interface was supposed to be scheduled for 8:33 a.m. Eastern time. A little support ship, is that the like a little inflatable raft deal out there? California Eagle Soars USA. So California will not see the return. Correct? Yes, that's correct. Yeah, it's not gonna be near California. This is off the coast of Florida, and it's gonna be coming in a southeastern direction. So yeah, unfortunately, California, you're out. It's going to be cutting right across this. I guess it's let's see, which way is it? This way in the stream. So it's going to be cutting across this way across the United States there. So Chris Levick says, I thought they said 15 minutes from burn to landing. I think the 15 minutes is the duration of the deorbit burn. So it's a 15-minute long deorbit burn to actually get it out of orbit. So the deorbit burn is going to last and will last until like 10 after 8. Then it will actually travel and make its way into the atmosphere. Then you've got entry interface coming through the atmosphere, slowing down. You got the parachutes coming out, and then the actual landing. So I believe I think we're still on track for the 8:45 landing. So still about 45 minutes until the actual splashdown. Everybody's got a theory that there's gonna be a plot twist. Maybe Ripley's gonna jump out of the capsule at the end and go, surprise. I don't think so, but wouldn't that be something? And they're back.
Halfway through that deorbit burn, so again, we expect it to last about 15 minutes and 20 seconds. The visiting vehicle officer all the way back in Houston was just reporting to the station flight director, again, that we were about halfway through. We're continuing to get a couple of views from the boats, and again, those are cameras that are going to be tracking Dragon once it's coming down under those parachutes. And we're also starting to get, it looks like this is a view from a WB-57 airplane.
Some high altitude tracking there. There's your footage that you wanted from the balloon.
Assets out there off the Florida coast. Again, there's two ships rather, both with tracking cameras on board. And NASA also flying its WB-57 aircraft, typically used for high altitude weather research and other science missions. But it has a camera affixed on it. and should hopefully give us some views of Dragon coming down under those parachutes.
So there on your screen, you see a beautiful shot of Ghost Searcher, which is our primary recovery vessel. There on the front part of the ship, you can see what would essentially be the crew's quarters during the wait. They could be out to sea, depending on how rough the waves are, for a couple of weeks to just a couple of days, depending on the splashdown point. So they're coming into the view on the right-hand side of your screen. At the top is actually the helipad. For helicopters to land if we need to take the astronauts to shore quicker than just having them ride along on the ship. And really something that I just absolutely love about this vessel is underneath that helipad are actually medical quarters. So we're able to get the astronauts checked out immediately after egressing from the capsule, and we're able to check them out there and give them a warm welcome, not on land yet, obviously, but it's just such an incredible vehicle there that we're able to sustain so much activity while we're waiting for the astronauts to splash down, and then obviously once they are on board.
It's also important to note, so right now the teams are about 200 or so, give or take, nautical miles off the coast. That won't be the case when we are bringing crew members back. That landing zone much closer in. I think it typically ranges out about 20 to 24 nautical miles or so away from the port. So that gives them the capability to then get back in within just a couple of hours instead of a little over a day that it's looking like it's going to take the teams to bring Dragon back after this mission.
What is this we're looking at?
There we have some views from Dragon as it is re-entering the atmosphere. It's pretty dark in space.
Yeah, we're still in the midst of that deorbit burn. We're expecting that to take about 5 more minutes, so that's pretty unique, getting views from the spacecraft while that deorbit burn is still underway. But again, this is just the final maneuver, that final firing of those Draco thrusters, just to bring Dragon out of orbit and set it up on a trajectory to ultimately splash down over there in the Atlantic, where, as you were just seeing, the recovery teams are standing by, ready and waiting to receive.
Yeah, so apparently this is a view on board Dragon, and I don't know.
And again,
I don't exactly know what we're looking at here.
Planned to last about 15 minutes and 20 seconds. And this is just to ultimately carry Dragon out of its circular orbit. So right now it's been in a circular orbit just beneath the space station's orbit. We call it the co-elliptic orbit for the last several hours. And this deorbit burn is going to radically change that planned orbit, basically setting it up to intersect back down with the Earth, back down there in the water where the recovery teams are waiting.
Now that we have a full view of the recovery vessel on the very right side of your screen, we can see a portion of the ship that we weren't able to see before, and that's actually the portion of the ship where once the Dragon capsule is close enough, it will be lifted up out of the water by that vertical piece that you see there. It'll actually actuate out over the water and lift the Dragon capsule up out of the ocean and then bring it back onto the boat and set it down into its nest. So pretty cool. This is new technology that we've installed on this ship specifically for our Crew Dragon missions. So it's like we said before, this is a demonstration mission, and while our recovery team has been practicing for recovery operations, this is obviously the first time that they will be practicing with a vehicle that's coming from space. So we're all very excited to be bringing you live coverage as all of this unfolds over the next hour or so.
And to give you a timeline of that recovery period, it's expected to take a little under an hour or so for the teams to actually have the capsule back up on the boat, which in a situation where there's crew on board, that's about that hour to get the crew out of the water and onto the boat so they can do all of their initial medical checks and everything else that we typically do after crew members are returning from these long duration missions.
Cannot wait till we watch crew actually egress from the capsule. How awesome will that be?
The waves looking pretty calm, though, looking like really good conditions out there in the Atlantic. Again, they're a little over 200 nautical miles off the coast of Florida, and they'll ultimately be bound back for Port Canaveral, where the the spacecraft's going to get brought back in and handed over to the SpaceX teams there, where they're going to begin processing and then pretty much getting ready to turn it around for that ascent aboard.
Yeah. We've been monitoring the recovery weather conditions over the last several days, and now that Recovery Day has come upon us, we can see that we have beautiful skies and well, in my unprofessional nautical knowledge, relatively calm seas by my eyes. But you know, it's really difficult to be able to predict what the weather is going to be like at sea very far in advance. So we're all very happy to be able to have clear imagery of the recovery team as we make progress here.
I feel like we've lucked out with Florida weather so far on this mission. All right, and we're here, and there's about 1 minute left in this deorbit burn, so just about done with that. And again, this is just that final maneuver.
Still got footage
to begin bringing Dragon out of
here.
Space and down to the ocean.
Deorbit burn they're doing.
A couple of views from on board the Dragon spacecraft. That's what you're looking at right now.
So once this deorbit burn finishes, we've got about 35 minutes from the end of the burn until splashdown. So we still got some time to go yet, but they are coming up. This is what we're looking at here, I guess, is the deorbit burn. It's kind of a little bit abstract, but yeah, this is a view from the Crew Dragon of the deorbit burn.
All right, now we're just going to stand by and listen for how the deorbit burn went. Should be wrapping up momentarily.
And a couple of people on YouTube have been commented.
So, like Dan said, we are waiting confirmation of the conclusion of the deorbit burn. It's been going on for the last several minutes, and like we said before, Dragon departed space station earlier today, performed a number of departure burns, and now we are hopefully just exiting the final burn, and that's the reentry burn. And there on the left-hand side of your screen, you can see our recovery vessel waiting for the splashdown of Dragon. Once we exit the re-entry burn, we will have parachute deployment. The first one of those will be the drogue chutes, the smaller chutes that slow the vehicle down, followed by the main parachute deployment. And that will slow it down even further, allowing it to come to a slower velocity as it approaches the surface of the ocean.
And we are being told that was a nominal burn. So the deorbit burn is complete. Dragon is on its way home.
It's another good milestone to pass.
The next thing that's going to happen
deorbit
is that nose cone on Dragon is going to get closed. We heard that process is now in work. And then it's time for Dragon to really get through the Earth's atmosphere and ultimately splash down. So that's where the vehicle is going to heat up tremendously, because again, you have to keep in mind Dragon traveling at thousands of miles per hour right now, and when it hits the thicker part of the Earth's atmosphere, it's going to heat up tremendously from the friction. And this is actually video of the nose cone starting to close on the Dragon spacecraft.
There we go. It's closing of the nose cone there. Got to get that.
And again, that nose cone
Shut
just
down.
closes to protect that top portion of the vehicle from all of the re-entry events, not only the re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere, but also once it's down in the water. And that protects the guidance and navigation and control sensors on top of Dragon, and also that docking ring that it uses to attach to the space station.
So again, what you're seeing right now is the nose cone closing on the Dragon spacecraft as we await for it to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah, that gives us a little bit of perspective on what we were actually looking at before. So that black abstract image we were looking at before was apparently out the docking port up the top of the capsule, it seems like. And so we were looking up out the top of the capsule while the capsule was deorbit. It was initiating a burn in the opposite direction.
All right, so that nose cone looks like it's just about closed. We'll wait for final confirmation that everything looks good with it. But then pretty soon, we're going to be looking towards the actual entry interface. So that's, again, where Dragon starts hitting enough atmosphere that it's going to start heating up. Because right now it's still high enough, even following that deorbit burn, that it's still not feeling those effects. But the atmosphere is going to get thicker as it starts to descend, and that's going to heat the vehicle up. That's why you always have this heat shield on the bottom of these spacecrafts, and that's why a lot of them are in these, this conical shape. As a lot of engineers I've talked to, they like to say physics haven't changed since the 1960s. When we made the spacecraft back then, it was for that it was that shape for a reason, and so that's why it's so common to see this capsule design. Just because of how you re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, it makes a lot of sense.
So we just heard confirmation that the nose cone hooks have begun the process of securing the nose cone into place prior to that re-entry burn.
That's right. And so there's actually an anticipated time where you lose signal with the spacecraft, and that's just because as you're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere and you go through that intense heat, plasma actually builds up on the outside of the spacecraft, and you can't send or receive signals from there. So it's very common when there's people on board, you'll lose the voice communication between them and the ground, and you'll lose all the telemetry or the data streams that you have coming from the spacecraft to rooms like the Mission Control Center just behind us here in Hawthorne. So that'll be coming up. We're expecting that to happen at about 5:33 a.m. Pacific. So coming up in just about 20 minutes from now.
Exactly. And so after we are able to get through that phase of the mission, like we said before, following that will be the deployment of the parachutes and then splashdown.
Right.
So just a quick recap in case if you have just joined us recently. We have departed from the International Space Station. Dragon completed a series of 4 departure burns in a slowly choreographed maneuver. And now we have already jettisoned the trunk of the Dragon spacecraft. We have completed the deorbit burn, and now we're just starting to come back down through the Earth's atmosphere in the final leg on Dragon's way home.
That's right. So that nose cone's closed, and we're just going to be standing by to wait until we go through that entry interface. Again, that'll be about 20 minutes from now. And then once it's down through there, it's time for the parachutes. And we talked about the parachutes a little while ago, and we should hopefully get to see those parachutes maybe from the plane. But once it's down beneath the cloud deck, so we should be able to see them from the boats that'll be standing by out there at the recovery zone. And it comes in 2 different stages. Can you walk us through the parachutes real quick?
Yeah. So with the parachutes, we will have the drogue parachutes. Those are the smaller chutes that will come out that will slow the vehicle down a little bit. And then we will have the main parachutes. Those are clearly visible by the orange and white coloring on them. Very iconic if you've watched our previous Dragon splashdowns for the cargo resupply missions. So we will have that, and then that's what will slow the vehicle down enough to have a safe splashdown in the water. So at this point, another fun fact about Dragon, in the return to Earth, the seats inside the capsule at this point have actuated or turned into the re-entry position. So depending on what phase of the mission we are in, the seats will actually actuate or adjust the angle to make sure that the G-forces that the astronauts will be experiencing are in the right places. So with that being said, we will take a quick break as we active operations here at SpaceX. So with that being said, we will take a quick break. Be sure to stay tuned with us as we go through this period of anticipated blackout with the Dragon capsule. We'll be back in just a few as we come back in anticipation of that parachute deployment. Stick around.
All right, so there we are. We've got the deorbit burn has completed. The nose cone has retracted back into the normal position, and the hooks were securing it into place. And so now we're waiting for reentry interface, which is coming up in about 15 minutes is when reentry interface starts. And this is the critical part. This is the part that Elon had said that they were concerned about, but slightly concerned about. I mean, they've run simulations. They are well prepared for this, but it was a slight concern for the mission coming up, just because this is the first real world test of this, and so there's always going to be some nerves, and you got to wonder, like, all these simulations that we ran and these tests that we ran over the course of months and months and months, are they actually going to is it going to happen that way in real life? And we're going to find out here shortly, but I have confidence in them. I mean, everything so far on this mission has gone so well. So we'll see. Knock on my wood desk here, and we'll see how that goes. But we should be looking at splashdown in under 30 minutes now. We're about 28 minutes away from splashdown here, or at least scheduled splashdown. So they will splash. They will come in under parachute. There's no propulsive landing. They will not try to catch it. There's it's a lot safer and was a lot easier for NASA to certify the capsule as ready for crew, just using parachutes and splashing down in the ocean. Any of those other things, propulsive landing, trying to catch it or something like that, like those all add an element of complexity that would make it much harder to certify for crew. So just using parachutes and splashing down in the water, that was the way to go. And from a refurbishing standpoint, NASA for their crew is going to use all new capsules every time. So for NASA, they didn't really care how you recovered it, because as long as you recovered it safely, that was their primary concern, because they were just going to use a new capsule the next time. But SpaceX, they're going to be concerned about refurbishing and recovering it and things like that. This particular capsule is scheduled to be on the in-flight abort test I think it's scheduled for May still. So this capsule will get refurbished and reused for the in-flight abort test. And then there'll be a new capsule for Demo-2, the first crewed mission. And then the host said, Kate said that they may actually display it. You can actually see up here is the cargo dragon. They may display it at SpaceX headquarters. That would be pretty cool.
So that was the last major milestone. We've also confirmed that the nose cone is closed. The hook's all engaged. And so now we're just waiting for Dragon to begin making its way through the Earth's atmosphere. That deorbit burn lasted a little over 15 minutes and was reported that it was done successfully, no issues, and Dragon is now on its way home. You're continuing to get some pretty great views from the boats out there in the splashdown zone. We're also going to be on the lookout for some video, possibly from an aircraft that we have in the area. One of NASA's WB-57 research planes is going to be trying to get some views of Dragon and the chute deploy and actually coming down under the parachutes. There are some clouds in the area, so the boats might not see it right away, but once it's underneath those cloud decks, they'll have some pretty great views of it coming down.
So there on your screen, again, you can see our primary recovery vessel. That is, well, there it went. But that is our recovery ship that is fully equipped with medical quarters for checkouts. Once we do have crew on board Dragon for our upcoming missions, they will be able to come out of the capsule and get a full medical checkout immediately afterward. There's also a helipad there where a helicopter can land in the event that we might need to get them back to port sooner than what the boat may be able to go. And there on your screen, you can actually see, I mentioned earlier, the lift that will bring Dragon out of the water has actuated it into its recovery position. So that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen at the end of the boat. And that is what will actually take Dragon out of the water, lift it up, and then place it into its nest, which it's the official term for it on the ship. And then that would be considered...
I like that, the Crew Dragon nest.
The end, at least whenever we get to that point, that will be the end of our webcast today. But at this point, we're still waiting for the parachutes to deploy and then for the entire recovery operation, which, like I mentioned before, the recovery team has practiced this, but obviously not with a vessel that has come down from the International Space Station yet. So a lot of firsts that we'll be seeing today, and we're really excited to be able to share that with you.
Yeah, and if you missed the very beginning, the fun historical tidbit we had for today was it's been almost 50 years to the day since we've landed a spacecraft designed for humans in the Atlantic Ocean. That last one was Apollo 9, and that was back on March 13th, 1969. It was actually supposed to land in the Pacific, but ended up shooting for the Atlantic, and that was the last time they landed one in that area. So it's going to be exciting to see this water recovery. All of our crew members for the last couple of years, well, basically since we stopped flying the space shuttle, have come down for land landings over in Kazakhstan on the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. But in the not too distant future, we'll have crew members Doug Hurley and Bob Benkin, still waking up. They'll be on the Dragon for the Demo-2 mission a little bit later this year. So everything looking really good so far. We're going to continue to stand by and wait for that entry interface. We are just about 20 minutes away from when we're expecting to actually see Dragon under those parachutes. So not much longer, good things to come.
There's a lot of anticipation. There's a crowd growing behind me here.
Gotta be a lot of nerves there.
Our Mission Control Center is just down there, and you can probably hear the voices in the room around us, and the crowd is definitely starting to grow in anticipation of Dragon's reappearance. So with that being said, we will take a quick break as we await for Dragon to re-enter and for those parachute deployments. Stick around. We'll be back in just a few.
All right, so another quick break from the team here while we wait for re-entry interface, which is coming up in a few minutes. So I would like to say, you know, my usual spiel while we're waiting. We're about 20 minutes away from splashdown, even less from when we actually see the parachutes. But while we're sitting here waiting, take the opportunity, maybe like the video, throw some hearts over if you're on Periscope, follow the channel, or make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. So you can follow along with us for all kinds of stuff like this, because we pretty much cover all these SpaceX launches. But yeah, we're waiting for the actual landing and splashdown to happen. It's coming up soon. Very excited here. We got this nice view of Ripley inside the Crew Dragon capsule here. No hashtag Space Kirby, which is the little Earth celestial buddy zero-G indicator. Space Kirby stayed behind on the International Space Station. He's gonna be a permanent resident up there, at least for the near future. And then our splashdown happening in the Atlantic Ocean coming up here soon. People are asking about Ripley, the anthropomorphic test device, the test dummy, our test astronaut there. Her name is Ripley, after Ellen Ripley, the Sigourney Weaver's character in the movie Aliens. It is not Buster from Mythbusters. It's also not Starman. Starman is still cruising around in his Tesla, cruising the solar system there in his Tesla. Nobody can get him to pull over for a quick interview. So he's busy. Let's see. Hard to visualize how far away it is right now. Let's see. I think because the higher speed would say it's harder to have a camera hang. Yeah. So some people had asked about why there was no camera view of the trunk jettison, and really it's really difficult to get a camera on board the Crew Dragon capsule because generally you got to have some protection for the camera, and like the first stage, you can have kind of a protection hood and show the camera below it, and so all the aerodynamic forces hit that hood and the camera's protected. In the Crew Dragon, it's a lot more difficult. You can't really have that sort of thing because it goes to space and then it also comes backwards, so you could get a lot of forces in on that camera in both directions. So anyways, they're back. We're gonna
in the not too distant future, NASA astronaut Bob Behnken. Bob, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking a couple of minutes. I know you're following along with the teams. There's a lot of excitement. How are you feeling about the mission so far?
Well, I think I said this before when we were out here for the ascent phase and docking. Just super excited. Of course, this one is the precursor for our mission that's upcoming here. And so when this one's done successfully, we'll be one step closer to our flight.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what is in store for you between now and that flight? What kind of preparations do you have left to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a significant amount of training that we need to go through. So we'll walk through all the various phases of flight. So we'll do pre-launch. We'll get suited. We'll do that here in Hawthorne in the Buck. We'll do a walkthrough at the Kennedy Space Center, actually on the launch pad. Learn a little bit more about the emergency escape system if we should need that prior to launching into space. And so we'll walk through all those different scenarios. Then we'll head back out here again for a couple of other events associated with docking and, of course, with the reentry.
And so we're getting views inside the Dragon spacecraft, and I mean, a camera's okay, but it can't do the real thing justice. What's it like to be like in a spacecraft when you're coming back through and everything's heating up?
Yeah, there's a couple of pieces of coming back through the atmosphere. The first one is really emotional for those of us who've seen a lot of spacecraft come back. It's just it's very special to kind of go through that experience, and it's a physical thing as well, as you actually see the light from the atmosphere as it heats up the external portions of the spacecraft. You see some orange lights flickering, the plasma kind of go past the windows. The windows will be down near our feet on this vehicle. That'll be our closest view out the window per se, but it's definitely something that we'll be able to see and know the outside of the vehicle is going through something pretty severe, and we'll be hoping it takes care of us as it takes us through entry.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine what that experience might be like.
Remarkable. Again, there's the physical piece of it. You can, sensations that come in with the light, but there's also the emotion of knowing that you're taking all that energy that you put into the vehicle to get it into orbit. It's all got to come back out so that you can get back to the ground safely.
So it's been a while since you've been to space. Is there anything you're really looking forward to when you get to the space station? Anything like what's your bucket list once you get back up there?
For me, when I get back to the International Space Station, I really am looking forward to seeing it completely complete. I was pretty close with my flight. We put the cupola on the underside of the space station. One of the things close to the construction complete on the International Space Station. So I'm looking forward to getting back in there and actually experiencing sunrises and sunsets again. They're just remarkable from on orbit. Not quite the same as they are from the ground, and can't get that anyplace else.
Last question for you. I'm sure you've been following along on social media. You've seen the photos of our zero-G indicator. Now, he's not coming back until you bring him back for us, so you'll have a little bit of time to play with him while you're on station.
Perfect.
Is there anything that you would like to teach little Earthy while you're up on station with him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't actually realize that little Earthy was going to stay on board the space station until Lee Rosen, one of your folks here at SpaceX, come and let us know when we sat down to watch Undocking, and he said, "Hey, we're going to need Earthy back. You've got to bring him back." And so I think our plan is to have him teach us. He's going to welcome us aboard probably when we get there. And I think Ann and David and Oleg have trained him up well. So hopefully he can walk us through the emergency brief, and he's a full-fledged station crew member by the time that we get there.
Well, it definitely looks like he's been getting a crash course in just about everything.
Yeah, he should have it all, and he ought to be able to transfer it to us. That's part of being a crew member that arrives and takes over responsibilities on the International Space Station.
That's very cool. Well, we certainly look forward to him coming back, as well as you and Doug, in our Demo 2 mission in a couple of months. So it'll be very exciting.
Very much looking forward to it, as you might imagine.
Us as well.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to get back to the reentry interface, Bob. We're going to let you go watch along because, again, vested interest in everything that's happening. Thanks so much for jumping upstairs real quick and talking about this.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, we
So Bob's going to bring back
awaiting the
Space
deployment,
Kirby.
or excuse me, the final phase of the re-entry of Dragon spacecraft as it's coming back through the Earth's atmosphere. I'm still kind of reeling from his comments about what it's like to actually come barreling through the Earth's atmosphere, something that you see depicted in movies and TV shows, of course, but to hear it live from the source is pretty cool. And that's exactly what Dragon and Ripley are doing right now. So we brought you a live view of that just a couple of minutes ago. That was pretty cool that we were able to get that shot. Like we said, plasma will be building up on the exterior of the vehicle as it's re-entering the atmosphere. So there's a blackout period that we were expecting, and that's where we're at right now. So, well, we can't bring you a view of Ripley on her journey back to the Atlantic Ocean. You can see a view of our recovery ship there. Like I said before, we can now see that the lift arms have actuated out into the recovery position, and they're like that in anticipation of Dragon being pulled in to position closer to the end of the ship and being lifted up into the recovery nest.
And you got to imagine the teams out there on the ocean are ready for this to come home. And again, since they're about 200, give or take, nautical miles out to sea, they actually left yesterday, so they've been out on the water for some time. So they're ready and waiting. Again, the prime team is on that Ghost Searcher, and that's a bunch of SpaceX technicians who are going to be responsible for going out on some fast boats that will deploy from that prime ship. And they'll begin just basically getting the capsule stable and then bringing it in closer to ultimately get hoisted up on the ship. Also going off to make sure that they get those parachutes as those get jettisoned from the capsule at pretty much just at the moment of touchdown. So We're just going to be ready to watch all of that unfold pretty soon. We should be seeing those parachutes in about 10 or 11 minutes from now,
Coming up
right
soon.
after Dragon
Coming up
begins
fast.
that final plunge through the Earth's atmosphere. So we're getting a lot closer. Things are really going to pick up once we get those first views of Dragon over the Atlantic there.
Absolutely. So like Dan just said, we've got about 10 minutes until we see the first deployment, which are the deployments of the drogue parachutes. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few as we get closer to parachute deployment.
All right, so we are coming up fast here on the actual reentry interface, which is actually, we should be, oh no, we're 1 minute away. We should be 1 minute away from reentry interface, which would be the actual, the moment that the capsule starts getting into that blackout period. It's going to start building up the plasma and start heading. That's when the forces on that capsule really start getting intense as it starts heading, basically plowing through the atmosphere, and then we're going to see if how the cowling on the Super Draco engines performs. They've done lots of simulations. It should be fine, but it was something to keep an eye out. This is the critical moment of re-entry here. Super nerve-wracking right now, but it's uncrewed. Obviously want to make sure that it actually comes back successfully and lands. Look at it, quite the crowd build up there at SpaceX. But yeah, it's got to obviously land successfully here now. But imagine a couple of months from now when you get Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley on there and you're going through this reentry phase and you know that it has to come out successfully because there are people on board there. It's going to be crazy. So Ripley, obviously we want to see Ripley survive as well, because Ripley's going to plow through the atmosphere along with the capsule right now. Going to come through, parachutes will deploy, we'll get some footage. They do have, that's kind of a cool view right there. So that's Go Searcher. That's the recovery ship that will actually pick up the Dragon capsule. It will pick it up with that back section there. It'll basically pull it out of the water and set it into the Dragon nest, which is the little platform in the back. And then there is footage out there. So this is footage from Go Navigator, which is the other ship that's out there. So Go Navigator is showing us Go Searcher. Those are the two support ships that are out there. And then there's also a NASA high altitude plane that's out there that will give us some footage, hopefully, of the early stages, drogue chutes coming out, all that kind of stuff. And so that is circling around. They've showed us some footage of that. Hopefully we'll get to see that as well as the capsule comes through. Let's see. It's definitely a big deal. Some people say it's a bit of a big deal. Greggy Boop's got his cup of tea ready. Beyond excited for this. I am as well. I got my SpaceX gigantic Falcon Heavy mug here. This is a lot of coffee. Somebody had mentioned it earlier in the comments, but this is a huge mug. I love it. But I figured it was just fitting for the SpaceX content today. And then we've got our small little support ship there. That'll be the first to greet the Crew Dragon, that little support ship. I didn't even just saw that on the corner of my eye here. So that'll be the first to greet the Crew Dragon and see how all the systems performed at landing and see how the capsule itself, they will be the first ones to meet up. And presumably when you actually get crew on board, they would be the first people to welcome the crew back to Earth right there. So Chris says it's way past his bedtime. Are we going to do this thing or what? Yeah, it should be coming up. We're about 10 minutes away from Splashdown, so we should start seeing parachutes probably in about 5 minutes from now. So we're really coming up on it here now. Yeah, and Tyler says Splashdown on that like button. I love it, Tyler. Yes, thank you. Splashdown on that like button for the video. Maybe throw over some hearts on Periscope as well. Make sure you follow along and do all that kind of stuff. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a good reminder. Appreciate that, Tyler. Thanks for throwing that out there. Kevin says coffee is necessary for re-entry. Yes, definitely need the big giant vat of coffee here that I have. I do love this mug. 1:30 in the afternoon where Firefox is. It's 8:30 in the morning here. I'm on the East Coast. I'm not in Florida, but I am on the East Coast. So it's 8:36 here. Landing's expected at 8:45. So we're about 9 minutes away from Splashdown, which is coming up soon. point the camera up, everybody's saying. Yeah, the first images we'll see are likely going to be from the high altitude plane. So we'll see those first. This is kind of just the recovery crew getting ready. They got to be anxious too, because we're really getting into it now. Christian's getting seasick from the ships bouncing up and down in the water. I know, it really does kind of give you a perspective on you know, how your stomach might not sit well at sea, just sitting there slowly bobbing up and down the whole time. I could definitely see getting seasick from that. Oh, Sandy Alice is sending us hearts on Periscope from Perth, Australia. Well, thank you, Sandy. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the hearts over on the Periscope channel. Kids are all watching, she says, or he says. Yeah, oh, here we go. There it is. There's the Dragon capsule right there, plowing through the atmosphere. Oh, and SpaceX is back here.
Airplane, you were looking at Dragon
there we
streaking
go.
Across
Look
the
at that.
Sky on its re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere, aiming for a splashdown in just a little while from now.
So it's pretty exciting that we get this shot right now, as it is our first view from planet Earth of the Dragon capsule since it lifted off from Cape Canaveral just several days ago.
I will say this is a pretty rare treat to be able to see this here. And again, this video is coming from a NASA airplane that we're flying around that recovery zone there, a WB-57. It's commonly used for a lot of atmospheric studies and other science missions. But able to put a tracking camera on it to try and get this re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere today. We're hearing that they should have AOSO acquisition of signal back with the Dragon spacecraft. Right now it's about 46 kilometers in altitude.
Signal back. Ooh, this is the exciting part now.
Yeah, so just for orientation purposes, if you've seen our launches previously, you might be familiar with the angling of this as takeoff. Reminder, this is re-entry. The plane is below the Dragon spacecraft and the camera's looking upward as it's coming over the spacecraft. So it looks like from the orientation of the imagery there that Dragon is going up when in fact it is still coming back down towards Earth.
That is crazy. Somebody on Periscope says it looks like a laser beam. It does look like a laser beam. Somebody else said it looks like a Roman candle.
And again, just keeping you on the timeline. So we actually acquired signal about a minute ahead of when it was expected, where we're going to be looking for those initial drogue chute deployments at about 41 minutes after the hour. So after Dragon gets a little bit lower down, we're going to be keeping an eye out. You're going to see the drogue chutes deploy initially, followed by those 4 main parachutes, much larger and able to slow the vehicle down for a much softer splashdown in the ocean.
And they have acquisition of signal. So they are receiving telemetry from the Crew Dragon there. And there it is. You got a little bit.
We should be getting that drogue chute deployment in just about 2 minutes now.
About 2 minutes to drogue chute deployment.
I just heard that we're now below 30 kilometers.
That's about where our weather balloons go to. It's about 30 kilometers up. So it's now below that altitude. You see the trail is kind of fizzled out there, the trail of plasma. So it has dissipated a lot of heat,
if you're just
a lot
now
of speed.
tuning in, this is Dragon. This is Dragon coming home. This is from a camera on board a chase plane there at the landing zone over the Atlantic, about 200 or so nautical miles off the coast of Florida. We're like under 30 kilometers, continuing to descend.
The
next milestone we're going to be looking for is parachute deployment.
I don't know if that was just a little camera artifact or maybe something actually jettisoned from the actual crew capsule, but it looked like something.
And hearing we're now about 20 kilometers in altitude.
Waiting on drogue chutes here first.
The Dragon spacecraft continuing to descend. It's now subsonic, so already starting to slow down thanks to the aero braking, basically slamming into that Earth's atmosphere, causes a lot of friction and allows the vehicle to eventually reach its terminal velocity, basically. And then those parachutes are going to kick in.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Look at that. Let me get myself out of the way.
So there you have visual confirmation of the deployment of our drogue parachutes. This is the first of 2 parachute deployments.
So those drogue chutes do the initial slowing, and then they're ultimately going to pull out the 4 main parachutes responsible for really slowing the spacecraft down prior to
How awesome is that? This little charge.
Cheering here at SpaceX headquarters as the employees that have gathered around our Mission Control Center are sharing the same view as you. What a gorgeous shot of Dragon coming back down.
Oh, there we go, mains. Yes. There it is.
Here come the mains.
So over the next few seconds, we will see those main parachutes exactly like that begin to expand as they capture more air, further decelerating the Dragon vehicle down to the Atlantic Ocean.
That is a beautiful sight right there. Wow.
Really can't ask for
awesome.
a more picture-perfect shot than that.
That is amazing.
And yes, all 4 chutes now deployed. It's going to continue to descend. It's going to continue to slow down and then ultimately splash down in the Atlantic there. We're now under 1 kilometer in altitude.
It's going to slow way down. We got Splashdown is just about 2 minutes away, pretty much right on time at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time. We're at 8:43 right now.
Just about 750 meters to go.
Getting at cloud level, you see the clouds in the background. Look at this.
In case if you're just joining us, you can see on your screen there, Dragon has just re-entered the Earth's atmosphere after departing from the International Space Station. We have a gorgeous shot of 4 healthy parachutes deployed and slowing the vehicle down as it is approaching the surface of the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Florida.
And it's continuing to descend under those chutes. We just passed 500 meters. Everything continuing to look good via reports to all the flight control teams. Now we're at about 400 meters.
Kind of crazy watching those parachutes all crash into each other. You wonder how they don't get all tangled together and everything.
And just passing 300 meters, continuing to descend. We might be right on time. We were planning on splashing down at about 5:45 a.m. Pacific, and we're getting real close to that bingo time.
It's going to be pretty much right on it.
And we have confirmation that Dragon is now under 100 meters, is 100 meters above the surface of the ocean.
So next up, standing by for splashdown.
There it is. Boom! Splashdown. There go the ships after it.
There we have confirmation of
That is
Splashdown.
awesome.
Dragon has returned to planet Earth. It is now back home. And you can see on your screen our 2 fast boats racing out to the capsule, now in recovery.
That splashdown came right on time, 5:45 a.m. Pacific, 8:45 a.m. over on the East Coast. The teams that have been ready and waiting, they were staged just a few nautical miles away. They're going to start moving in now. You can see those 2 fast approach boats already speeding their way towards the capsule.
Pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that they were they were there at the landing site like that, because I mean,
Well, there's still a little bit more work to be done at this point. Like we said, the recovery team has to safe the vehicle and then lift it onto the recovery vessel. However, obviously by the excited cheers here at Mission Control, the splashdown is an enormous event for us in terms of the safe reentry, the safe return to Earth from the International Space Station.
That's right, and you'll notice 2 boats on their way. One boat actually responsible for beginning to safe the vehicle and get it ready to go up onto the boat. The other one's going to go off and collect those parachutes, as those 4 main chutes actually get jettisoned away from the spacecraft as soon as the vehicle detects that it's splashed down in the water. But if you missed it, I'm really sorry, because that was really cool to see. But Dragon did splash down at 5:45 a.m. Pacific time, 8:45 a.m. over there on the East Coast, where they're now moving in on a Dragon spacecraft in the water, ready to recover it.
Exactly. So like we said, the recovery team has been ready and waiting for a Dragon splashdown. It's been quite the morning, evening. Dan and I have been here since yesterday night, bringing you coverage from Dragon departure from the International Space Station, now all the way down to splashdown. So it's a great next milestone, and we are excited to bring you coverage of the recovery operations as well. But we have a few minutes before that happens, so we're going to take a break momentarily, and we will continue bringing coverage as the recovery operations progress.
Well, that was just incredible. That was awesome. You can see, all right, they're putting the music on here now. We'll turn that music down. We're going to stick around. We're going to have to watch some of that again for sure. How awesome was that? That was so awesome. The capsule coming back. We got footage from the high altitude plane of it just plowing through the atmosphere. Looked like a laser beam to start with. Came right in. Drogue chutes came out. Got footage of it with the drogue chutes. Beautiful footage with the drogue chutes. Then we actually saw the mains deployed, which was amazing as well. And then the recovery team right there waiting, just not that far off at all, which is incredible. It's so amazing. Like, imagine, somebody said it on the Michael Zumega on the Periscope channel said it. Imagine the math and the physics and everything that's involved in that. To get the capsule back, to do all the engineering to get it back, but also just for the recovery team to be at that launch site and know exactly where it's going to come down within, I don't know how close they are, but they are very close to where this splashed down. I mean, those fast approach boats there were just right there waiting, and now they're already there. They're at the capsule. One of them is going to safe the capsule. The other one is going to recover the parachutes there. Just absolutely incredible, and hopefully they get a little bit closer to it, because I'd love to see the charring. Maybe it looked a little bit charred in some of those while it was coming down under parachutes, but that was amazing. That is such a relief that it made it back and splashed down, and hopefully everything was just fine, and that gives a green light for the commercial crew program to continue on to that in-flight abort, and then crewed missions coming up in as early as July. So yeah, this was amazing. The big thing that they're going to have to evaluate is how Ripley handled all the forces. Ripley's the anthropomorphic test device, the test dummy, that was inside. We'll have to see how Ripley handled, what kind of forces were put on Ripley during launch, but also during that reentry phase. So particularly while the capsule was plowing through the atmosphere, were there any huge vibrations or huge G-forces that were experienced or anything like that they're going to have to sort out. That's all unknown right now. The sensors that Ripley has, those are all recording on board, and so they actually have to recover Ripley to get all that data, because Ripley's sensors are not transmitting. As far as I'm pretty sure that's what they said at launch time, is that Ripley was not going to transmit real-time data. So they've got to go get Ripley and get her sensors to see how the reentry forces were or impacted her. So So, Jason's off to a meeting. Thanks for the stream. Thanks for hanging out, Jason. Thanks again for doing this. Yeah, thanks, Catherine, for hanging out. Yeah, it looks. Michael Zumega says yes. That looks slightly blackened on the way down. It did look a little charred, charred, and I do want to back it up to see what it, or so that we can watch that again here. So in case you missed it, we'll come back and we'll watch some of the live footage. It looks like there's a parachute that's actually caught on the capsule here. Is that one of the parachutes that's just landed right on top of the capsule? So let's see. We'll back it up just a little bit here. Right about the point where we saw the drogue chutes come out here. So, just a tiny bit farther back than that. So yeah, this was footage from earlier. I had to put out my replay text here so people know that it's a replay. I don't know where my replay text is, but yeah, this was a little bit earlier, just a few minutes ago. This was Dragon capsule coming in under, or this is not under parachute yet. This is just plowing through the atmosphere. We're about just seconds away from drogue chute deployment. So we're gonna take a look and see exactly how this went. Where's my replay? While we're doing that, I'm gonna see if I can figure out where my replay text went. I'm supposed to have text that says replay, so you know. There we go. There we go, and there's the drogue chutes coming out. Such amazing footage of the drogues coming out, and I've got the volume down pretty low, but yeah, there's the drogue chutes coming out. You get a pretty good idea and how quickly it's coming through the atmosphere there. And then we had a great, still saw something fall. I did see something that looked like it jettisoned. I forgot about that. I should have looked at the time so that we could go back and see what that was. But it could have been maybe the cover for the parachutes or something like that. But yeah, those are the little tiny drogue chutes slowing it down. You can see the capsule a little bit blackened and charred, doing a bit of rocking and rolling there. Gotta wonder how that's gonna feel. And then there go the mains. That was a beautiful shot right there. I love that, just to see the mains deployed so perfectly. Just came right out when the capsule slows way down. Once you get those huge main parachutes fully inflated there and expanded. And then down it came. That was awesome. How amazing was that? That was so awesome. I guess I could turn the volume up just a little bit here so you can hear that. But Andrew Cox wants to know why it's flying at an angle. That's really just because of where the parachutes come out. So the exact top of the capsule is reserved for all the docking capabilities. The docking port, that nose cone hinges off, and so that's where the actual docking happens. So they don't. They're not going to put the parachutes directly on top, and then they have all the parachutes come out of one port on the side, so it is slightly at an angle just because of where the parachute attachment is, which is not really a big deal. Those, like they said earlier, those seats adjust for reentry, and the astronauts are leaning back, so it would be quite comfortable. This is not unusual to come in at a slight angle for a capsule like this, so not really that big of a deal for the astronauts that are on board. This would be a comfortable. This would be the comfortable part of the ride, just kind of hanging out here and slowly coming down to Splashdown. Jack says that Alien is gonna jump out of the capsule with Ripley. I hope not.
And it's continuing to descend under those chutes. We just passed 500.
Yeah, it does. I can see where it looks a little bit strange, kind of hanging sideways like that. But yeah, that's just the parachute attachment point. So that's where that was, and we're gonna jump. Oh, they started talking here, so they jump back to live.
Fundamentally, this is like a great day for the nation, for SpaceX.
Let's get this turned back up here.
It's really for the world. I think it was Ann who said this is the first time in 40 years that we've have a spacecraft designed for humans to fly. And not only did she fly and go to the space station, do everything she was supposed to do, but we brought her home safe and sound, landing here in the Atlantic. Just amazing. I can't believe how well the whole mission has gone. Pretty much I think on every point, everything's been nailed all the way along. Particularly this last piece, we're all very excited to see as we go through reentry and parachute, drogue deploy, then main deploy, splashdown. Everything happened just perfectly, right on time, the way that we expected it to.
Almost
Beautiful.
down to the second.
Almost down to the second, right? It was amazing.
That was pretty amazing. They nailed the splashdown time.
As a team, SpaceX, we're here. We're just super honored to have the opportunity to have done this mission, to have worked with NASA to work through this. And Demo-1 is fundamentally this first major milestone in our process towards certification. I always like to remind everybody that, this is a whole system, right? There's Crew Dragon, but there's the Falcon that's going to be certified to fly humans. There's also all the ground systems, the operations, our entire factory and production system. Everything that we do is being certified to be able to fly astronauts safely. And this is a huge step towards that. As we kind of look back over what happened over the last few days, which seems incredible to me, and really it's the culmination of years of work to get us just to this day. We had launch, Crew Dragon deployed, beautiful free flight. One of the things that's hard to test when you're on the ground is how fluids work in microgravity. So things like the prop system and all of the propulsion, and what's amazing is that worked perfectly, just like we expected. We got to station, we docked, and it's the first time I think in history that a commercial vehicle and also an American vehicle has docked autonomously to the International Space Station. So that's just super cool. Loaded with all kinds of sensors, all kinds of tests that we did. We met Ripley. Yeah. We got to see, she's loaded with sensors so we can understand exactly all the forces that'll happen on the crew as they come, as they're launched and then sent to station and come home. We got to meet the Little Earth guy. I heard he's going to stay on station. Yep. And so that'll be for Bob and Doug to retrieve. So that's going to be exciting. Undocking, of course. Some more free flight, and then we came home. Jettisoned the trunk, closed the nose cone, and then again, like I said, just beautiful parachute deployment. Everything the way we expected. All of these gazillions of tests that we've been doing on parachutes. All of the analysis and work that we've done on understanding the aerodynamics of reentry and coming home, everything's just wonderful. The important thing now is we take all of this data that we've learned.
We love data.
And we love data, right? I mean, fundamentally, we're engineers and engineering-driven behavior, right? It's what we got to do. So we take all that great data, and we're going to apply that to the next steps. So what's coming up next, I think, because believe it or not, as excited and still shaking as I am about this return, there's a lot more to do, right? Because our ultimate goal is to be able to continue to staff space station, right? And provide astronauts rides up to space, give them a safe place to be, a safe place to come home in, and do crew rotations every 6 months. So how do we get there? So we finished Demo-1, huge milestone. Next up, we take that data, we apply it, we learn from it, and we're going to go to our in-flight abort test, similar to that pad abort test that we did a few years ago. Except this time we put the Dragon, and actually the same Dragon that we flew on Demo-1. We're going to take that and put it on top of a Falcon 9, launch it, get it going super fast, get it to test conditions, and then escape it off of the rocket. And again, do the same thing, bring it home safely on its parachutes, land it in the ocean. And then from there, after we get that done, we go to Demo-2. And that's kind of like, wow, that's the big prize, right? Because that's going to be sending Bob and Doug, our astronauts and our partners and our friends, sending them up on Dragon, taking them to station safely, bringing them home safely. And then with that done, we'll go through final full certification and start those 6-month rotation missions, which we're just also excited about. It's important to take a step back and think about all of what it took to get here, all the work from all the joint teams, NASA and SpaceX, all the support that we've had from friends and family, and really I think the most important thing is that on behalf of all of the 6,000 people here at SpaceX, we really want to thank NASA, we want to thank the space station, the international partners, and thank the American public for their support and partnership as we go through this. We're really proud to be part of this endeavor.
Thank you for being here with us. It is early Friday morning here in Hawthorne, so for those of us that work here at SpaceX, we still got a full workday going, and obviously we've already been working on Demo 2 for a while, even though today was the Demo 1 day, so I'm sure that you, like me, will continue our work on Demo 2 for the rest of the day.
I'm going into meetings to start talking about the next steps that we've already been working on Demo 2. So.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. Congratulations to your team as well on the success of the last week. Really, it's been awesome for us to be able to share the hard work of all SpaceX employees with the public. So with that being said, thanks for being here. We're going to take a quick break as we bring you more coverage of the recovery operations, which you can see is ongoing on your screen there on the left. So stick around.
Parachute off the capsule. All right, so there we go. We've got a little bit of commentary there about what it took to get to this point, but it is pretty amazing. It looks like Go Searcher and Go Navigator are actually getting a little closer here now because we can actually see the capsule. You can definitely see the charring now on the capsule there. Definitely very blackened looking, and you've got the fast approach boats that are there hanging out, looking at the capsule. They were trying to get that parachute off. Obviously, that was looked to be a little bit difficult. They were trying to reach it and pull that thing down. But yeah, it's great to see these live views here of the actual capsule just kind of bobbing in the water, sitting there and hanging out, waiting to be recovered. Looks like the team here, Mission Control here in Hawthorne, is kind of relaxed now. They're all kind of hanging back. Not a lot of data that they have to look at this point now that it's Splashdown. But you know, the mission's still not over for them. They do still have to go through the actual recovery operations, and they're treating this just like they would for the actual crewed missions, so that they go through all the procedures. You can see the crowd is kind of dispersed a little bit at Hawthorne, but yeah, we've got. See left screen crazy music alert. Hey, they've got the music playing here now on the SpaceX feed here, so we did have to turn it down just a little bit. But yeah, definitely got a little bit charred. Let's see. Coast on YouTube says, "I'm not crying, you're crying." Ripley will finally get to come out of there and see what's happening. Although I don't know if they'll actually take Ripley out. They'll probably just leave Ripley in and then and just take the whole capsule out. I don't think they're going to egress Ripley like they would an astronaut, but who knows? Maybe they'll go through that whole process, but I don't think so. Let's see. Did they put the capsule on the boat before opening the... Do they put the capsule on the boat before opening the hatch? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Historically, like in the Apollo days, they would open the hatch first, get the astronauts out, and then they would bring the capsule on board. But yeah, I don't know what SpaceX's procedures are going to be or what they're going to do exactly. But yeah, historically, they've always taken the astronauts out first, and then they would bring the capsule on board. Let's see. I guess the big boat's getting closer now. That's Go Navigator and Go Searcher. Let's see. What other comments do we miss? Amazing to hear some experiences from the Apollo days. Definitely, a lot of people are going to liken this to the Apollo days, especially with the parachute landing and the splashdown. You know, so much different than the space shuttle handled, much more reminiscent of the Apollo era, and even the days before that, the Gemini missions and Mercury missions and things like that. But yeah, the most recent being the Apollo era was, you know, kind of the last time we saw that in the U.S. with capsules splashing down like that. You know, with crew on board. Obviously, we've had the Dragon 1 or the Cargo Dragon has been doing that for a while, but now we're going to get some astronauts on board. Let's see what else we'd found out. Ian Leach wants to know what the descent velocity was during the last 400 meters. Yeah, I don't know the exact descent velocity. I think it was supposed to land around like want to say 15 miles per hour. Does that sound right? I could be completely making that up. But I believe it's somewhere in that range. It's a pretty soft splashdown at the end there. So not to put any huge forces on the astronauts. And they will, let's see, digital cameras pixelating. Yeah, the camera was pixelating a little bit. Breakfast time in the cafeteria. Yeah, the SpaceX broadcast is always right above the cafeteria area. You can kind of see it off to the left of this image there. But yeah, you can always hear cafeteria sounds going on in the broadcast, especially when the broadcast is during like the workday. Let's see. Yeah, well, we are. So we're kind of just hanging out here. We're gonna see what they have for recovery. I don't know how much longer we're gonna stick around to see the recovery operations. I guess it really depends on what they're showing here, because it is a Friday and it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I do actually have to get some work done for regular work today. But this is a pretty awesome occasion to see the first Crew Dragon come down. We got some pretty amazing footage there, and then you got a couple things to consider for when the next steps here. So the in-flight abort has to go right. I mean, it seems like everything from the untrained eye here, and just as an observer. Oh, we got Jim Bridenstine coming on.
For now, though, we do have another guest for today's broadcast, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, who's standing by over at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. So I'll send it over to you, Mr. Bridenstine. Thoughts about today's mission, what this means for NASA, and what we have to look forward to in the future.
Absolutely. This is an amazing achievement in American history. In fact, I said on a press conference at 4 in the morning after it launched that this was the dawn of a new era in American human spaceflight, and really in the spaceflight for the entire world, because of all of our international partners on the International Space Station. But this achievement spans many administrations. It spans many NASA administrators. I want to start by thanking Mike Griffin, who was the NASA administrator that really got this program going during the George W. Bush administration. And of course, Charlie Bolden was the administrator for 8 years under President Barack Obama. He kept this program strong. And then, of course, Robert Lightfoot was immediately preceded me. And here we are today with this amazing achievement. And the current president, President Trump, his budgets for NASA have been as strong as they have been in my adult lifetime. So this really is an American achievement that spans many generations of NASA administrators, and in fact, over a decade of work by the NASA team. So I want to congratulate, first of all, the NASA Commercial Crew Program, all of the amazing engineers that have been involved from the very beginning. I want to thank, of course, the amazing achievement of SpaceX and their entire team, and the vision of Elon Musk and what he has done to help really rejuvenate this very inspirational moment for this new era in American human spaceflight. So this is really an amazing achievement for all of America, but it's not just for all of America right now. It goes back in time. There are so many people that deserve credit, and really what's unique now is that NASA can be a customer. And I know there's a long way to go. We launched an uncrewed spacecraft here. Of course, we have Demo 2, which will be a crewed spacecraft. And between now and then, we have a pad abort that we need to test as well. And so these are all capabilities that are leading to a day where we are launching American astronauts on American rockets from American soil. I have heard, when I was a member of Congress, I heard over and over again, how do we keep constancy of purpose? Because it seems like we lurch from one administration to the next and changing visions and changing budgets. How do we keep constancy? Well, this is a perfect example of a program When we talk about these things that NASA does, it takes in many cases decades to achieve this kind of capability. And the constancy of purpose here for all of these years is important. But now NASA can be a customer. We can be one customer of many customers for human space flight in what we believe will be a very robust commercial marketplace for space operations. And we're going to have numerous providers that are going to compete on cost and innovation. And of course, that's how we're able to do what we've seen now, where rockets are being reused. The idea that we can reuse rockets and drive down cost and increase access to space, just an amazing capability for our country, an amazing capability for the world. Just like we reuse airplanes, there's going to come a day when we're reusing rockets and space flight is going to become more routine. We're not there yet. We have a long way to go. But this is an amazing achievement in this path to really a sustainable return to the moon, quite frankly, which is my charge the president has given me to get us back to the moon. So we're driving down costs for low Earth orbit. We're commercializing low Earth orbit, not just with launch, but also eventually with space stations, with human activities, where NASA can be a customer for human activities in low Earth orbit. And then we can use the taxpayer resources that are bestowed upon us. We can use those resources to do exploration, to go further, to go back to the moon sustainably, where we can stay at the moon and ultimately go on to Mars. And this is one small piece in that really grand vision, but this is no small piece. This is an amazing achievement in the history of the United States of America, and it just really exemplifies what we can achieve when we maintain that constancy of purpose.
All right, and thank you, Administrator Jim Bridenstine, again, joining us just there from NASA headquarters over in Washington, D.C. We are still waiting to get some views from all the recovery teams. They are still in that recovery process. Again, we expected it to be between 30 minutes and an hour until they get the Dragon capsule back up on the boat. So before we do get those feeds back, we're going to head out to JSC real quick, the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where we have a few more folks standing by, including Steve Stitch, who is the Deputy Program Manager for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. We also have Mike Hopkins, a NASA astronaut, and one of those astronauts already assigned to a future Dragon mission. And then Mr. Kenny Todd, he's the Operations Integration Manager for the International Space Station. So guys, I'll send it over to you real quick. Offer us your thoughts on how this mission's unfolded and what's ahead in the future.
Hey, thank you, Dan. Hey, it's great to be here representing the Commercial Crew Program. Just what an outstanding day to be part of our program. You know, we let our contracts in 2014 for these first missions, and to sit here today and talk about Demo-1 and how great the flight went and what we're going to learn from it, it's just amazing.
Seems nearly
I'd like to
perfect,
congratulate the SpaceX team. Phenomenal job getting the vehicles ready and executing the flight. Our whole NASA team that worked the mission. And if you just think about the enormity of what happened in this flight and all of the prep that went into it, getting the pad refurbished at 39A, getting the flight control room set up, getting the vehicles built, getting the Falcon 9 ready, all the analysis, all the mission support that went into it, the sims and the practice leading up to this flight over the last year or so. Just been a tremendous job. I would say one of the things that we learned during this flight is the great relationship we have between the program and SpaceX. I would say our teams work seamlessly back and forth with SpaceX, not only in the lead up to the flight, but in how we manage the flight through the Dragon mission management team, and then also working with Kenny Todd and the Space Station program. Space Station program did a phenomenal job supporting our program while we were docked to station, on the way to station, and the international partnership as well. So really great opportunity for this mission. The last 24 hours have been exciting for us. You know, we closed the hatches yesterday around noon, got into the undock today about 1:31 a.m., did a few small separations to get away from station. If you watched that on NASA TV, that was flawless. Did about 3 separations to get down below station, executed the deorbit burn at about 6:52 a.m. Central Time, and then landed at just a few minutes ago at 7:45. The vehicle is doing well. The recovery crews are out they're on the scene. They've already been around the spacecraft and made sure it was secure for personnel. You might have seen that one of the parachutes happened. It was a very calm day with very low sea states and low winds. One of the chutes kind of landed on the Dragon capsule. They already got that off. So that's going really well. It'll probably take 30 minutes to maybe an hour to get it back on the ship. But then when you kind of look overall at this mission, it was a great dress rehearsal for Demo 2. We learned a phenomenal amount in the pre-launch time frame about how to load the vehicle and thinking forward to how we'll put the crews in the vehicle. You know, the ascent profile for this flight, we practiced the exact profile that Mike Hopkins and others will fly very soon, Doug Hurley and Bob Binken. We had the abort system, the crew escape system in Dragon actually enabled for this flight, and we were able to see how that worked, and we'll get the data back and look at those triggers and how it performed. You know, on orbit, we got a lot of great data on the vehicle in terms of the thermal performance, power performance. The vehicle really did better than we expected. And then the rendezvous was
news for
phenomenal
SpaceX.
as we came in,
Better
checked out those sensors. The link to space station worked, the command link, watching the vehicle come in, and then have a real precise docking and seeing how the docking system performed. So that was phenomenal. And then during the attached phase, of course, we had cargo ops, which will do the same thing on both Demo 2 and then the Crew 1 and other missions. And then we did a robotic survey of the vehicle to look at the thermal protection system and other systems, and that went really well. I will say one thing, this mission, you know, it was only 6 days long. It was a sprint from start to finish. And thinking about, you know, where we've been in operations in that sprint, I think Kenny would probably tell you the same thing. It was just a phenomenal job by the team. And then, of course, today, you know, the undocking, watching how those systems performed, that went flawless. It's a very tight sequence between undocking and the deorbit burn, how the nose cone performed, how the deorbit burn was executed, and the entry was phenomenal. We did have Riley on board, a test dummy, and that's going to give us a lot of important data for the accelerations during both the ascent phase and then the entry phase under the parachutes and then landing. So we'll collect that data and look at that. You know, over the next few weeks, we'll be doing post-flight reviews. In fact, just next week, we'll have one for the launch vehicle and the ground segment at KSC. We'll start reviewing that. And then subsequently, we'll do reviews with SpaceX on the orbit phase of the mission.
A lot of people talking
this
about...
This flight really sets us up well for the rest of the
really
year.
talk, huh?
The very vehicle that's in the water
a lot of technical info
today
coming
will
here.
be the in-flight abort vehicle. And so one of the first things that will happen is the vehicle will come back to KSC and go over into the processing area and start getting refurbed for the in-flight abort test, which should be in the summer timeframe, in the June timeframe. And then Demo 2 vehicles at Hawthorne getting built for the first crewed mission. That's in progress and going well. That work has continued all through the flight. So that'll be a busy year for us for SpaceX with in-flight abort in the June timeframe, and then Demo 2 later in the year with the first crewed mission. I don't think we saw really anything in the mission so far, and we've got to do the data reviews that you know would preclude us having the crewed mission later this year.
That's really good news. Nothing really.
And then after that,
major.
you know, it's a busy time in our program.
Green
also,
light to continue.
If you look in the April timeframe, we're getting ready for the orbit flight test for Boeing, and that will happen very soon. And so our program will transition after this mission and the data reviews into preparing not only for in-flight abort and Demo 2, but also the orbit flight test, the uncrewed flight test for Boeing, and that'll be coming up in the April timeframe. Spacecraft 3, which is the Boeing vehicle, is coming together at the Commercial Crew Processing Facility down in Florida, and they're in the middle of a bunch of very critical testing right now at an El Segundo to verify the spacecraft can work successfully in space. And then later on this year, we'll have the crewed flight test for Boeing as well. So if you just look at all the activities in Commercial Crew, it's a super busy time. In addition to this flight, in the last few weeks, we did parachute tests for SpaceX and Boeing. And so if you look at all the activities to get ready for flying our crews, it's just a very exciting time. So again, congratulations to our SpaceX team and all the NASA people across the country that worked so hard for many, many years on this flight. It really sets us up for the rest of the year, and it's a super exciting time to be in Commercial Crew. Now I'll turn it over to Hopper.
All right, thanks, Steve. So on behalf of the astronaut office and the crew, I'd like to also extend our congratulations.
Hopefully this one's a little bit shorter, because I do have some things I wanted to say about what he had to say.
To really all of NASA and to everyone that was involved in this this major milestone on returning human launch and landing capabilities back to U.S. soil. I think that's very exciting. But as you can see on the video of the vehicle, work is still ongoing. The recovery procedures process is still ongoing, and I'm personally very anxious to hear how I think it's Ripley is feeling after they pull her out of the capsule and get her back onto the recovery vehicle. In terms of some major takeaways from a crew perspective, I think one of the things that we're very excited about from this DM-1 mission is, for the first time, we've gotten to see an end-to-end test. And so now we've brought together the people, the hardware, and all the processes and procedures, and gotten to see how they all work together. And that's very important on this as we move towards putting people on board the vehicle. And as Steve also said, of course, we're very interested in seeing the data. I suspect there's going to be some lessons learned, some improvements, some changes that we're going to have to make from this. That's all part of the testing process. In terms of what's ahead for the crew, so for all of the crew, including the DM-2 crew, Bob and Doug, and Crew 1, myself and Victor Glover, and then the backup crew, Kjell Lindgren, we're all going to be following very closely the in-flight abort test, as well as the procedures, the training to get ready for that DM-2 mission. We also have a lot of verification testing, final verification testing that we'll all be involved in, as well as test subjects for that. Specifically for Bob and Doug as DM-2, of course, they're going to start focusing even more on that training for the DM-2 mission. They've got, after this mission, they've got a lot less runway in front of them, so it's going to start moving, I think, a lot quicker. For the Crew 1 crew, the team, Victor and I, and even for Kjell as the backup, we've got a lot of training, not only for Dragon, but also for ISS. Our mission is to not only get up there and return safely, but is actually to do some work for the ISS program while we're there. And so that means we've got to do all of the training for being able to do the spacewalks and being able to operate the robotic arm and maintain the station and do that critical science that's been going on for, gosh, over 18 years now. Pretty amazing. So that's what's ahead for us. I guess finally I'd like to just kind of emphasize that this mission, this amazing week that we've had, is really just one small step in this very methodical build-up approach that we've been going through, that the program has laid out, that the company has laid out in order for us to put people on board these vehicles and get them up and back to the station. And so, again, congratulations to the entire team, and over to Kenny.
Thanks, Hopper. And just about any conversation you're going to have today with anybody around here is going to start with a congratulations. And so I'll certainly offer mine to Steve Stitch, Kathy Leaders, the commercial crew program. Just a phenomenal effort. It's not easy doing what this program's had to do for the last several years, and to finally see the product of that has just been incredible for the last week. And our friends out at SpaceX, Benji Reed, Artie Matthews, the team out there, we've been working with them for the better part of a decade doing commercial cargo services, and that's we know that team. They're as every bit excited about human spaceflight as we are, and their passion shows. It shows whenever they launch a vehicle. It shows whenever they bring a vehicle home. There's just a lot of excitement around that, and it's quite invigorating for a lot of us to see that kind of passion. All
right, really so I'm actually gonna turn down Kenny here for a minute. We'll keep him kind of slightly in the background a little bit, but I don't know what they're going to do after this, and so I want to make sure I get the opportunity to talk for just a minute before they switch back to whatever this is. Hopefully they go back to recovery operations here shortly. I blend into the background. But a couple of the big pieces that I took away, at least from the first guy that spoke there, is two big things. One, they saw that there was nothing that happened during the mission that would preclude them from continuing on with crewed missions, which is that's kind of a huge indication that that things are on track and that the commercial crew program can continue on as scheduled. And combine that with the fact that he also said that the Crew Dragon performed better than they expected. That's a big deal. I mean, think about that for just a minute. But the Crew Dragon performed better than they expected. So that means that their schedules and they expected some issues to come out of this test, and they could still continue on, but it performed better than expected, which gives me a lot of hope that they might actually be able to hit that July timeframe for crewed missions. Considering that a lot of people were really skeptical about that. A lot of people were thinking that we'd have this DM-1 mission, there'd be some issues that come out of it. They'd do the in-flight abort, but they'd have to, resolve some things, and that crewed flight for DM-2 might not take place until the fall. With this mission pretty much looking like it took place flawlessly, and NASA saying that it performed better than they expected, and saying that there were no issues that would prevent them from continuing on, at least no major issues of any sorts, that gives you a lot of good feelings that we could have a crewed mission in July as scheduled. Maybe August, maybe it gets pushed slightly, but I would like to think that it's going to be much closer to that July timeframe than some people were talking like October, November timeframe. Seems like they could really hit July, maybe August if there's a couple of small slips and delays. But that's really good news for SpaceX, good news for the commercial crew program, good news for U.S. astronauts in general to finally get a ride from U.S. soil here. And then we've got the Boeing program too that's also still scheduled to take flight and do crewed missions this year as well. So still got to wait and see how the CST-100 Starliner performs as well, because then we will have then we'll have 2 vehicles available for U.S. astronauts to ride on. So all right, now they're back. I'll switch back and see what the SpaceX hosts have to say here.
Thanks for those words. And now we're going to get back to the action. We're getting some views back.
All right, back to recovery here.
Of the Dragon spacecraft. The teams are in place, and now we're just waiting for it to make its way onto the recovery ship.
Exactly. So now that Dragon has splashed down into the Atlantic Ocean, the recovery team is going to go through a number of steps as we recover the Dragon spacecraft and lift it onto the recovery ship. Now, in case if you're joining us, well, just real quick, you can see on your screen there a live shot of Dragon recovery, the capsule bobbing in the sea there with the Dragon team working on those recovery operations.
Oh, there you go.
In case you are just joining us, the mission has gone very smoothly so far today. Dragon successfully splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean just several minutes ago.
At 5:45 a.m. Pacific.
5:45 a.m. So, gosh, I can't believe how late in the morning it is already. Time flies. And about 240 nautical miles away from Cape Canaveral. Approximately 6 hours prior to splashdown, Dragon autonomously undocked from the International Space Station, completed a series of departure burns, jettisoned its trunk section, and performed its final burn, the deorbit burn, itself on a trajectory.
The Dragon was under the 2 drogue chutes, and those were responsible for all of that initial slowing down. And they also were responsible for pulling out the main here. And those 4 main parachutes deployed successfully. We heard from Benji and also the teams during the action. But that all came after Dragon successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, and those parachutes were deployed. And now, though, we're on to the final part of Dragon's journey, as it's pretty soon going to get lifted out of the water and placed onto the recovery boat.
So again, this is a replay of the reentry and splashdown that we witnessed live several minutes ago. Gorgeous shot of those lovely full parachutes as they are slowing the Dragon capsule down to the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, it's already been 45 minutes since that happened.
Wow.
It feels like it was just
5.
about 5 minutes ago. But yeah, that splashdown was 5:45 a.m. Pacific, 8:45 a.m. So a little bit later in the morning over there on the East Coast when Dragon splashed down again. Yeah, about 200 or so nautical miles out from Port Canaveral.
If you've been following along with our mission this week, you already know that we don't have actual humans on board, just Ripley, our anthropomorphic test device. She has lots of sensors placed around the body, I guess you would say.
Looks like they were going to try to extract her from the vehicle too.
As well.
Yeah. So this will give us lots of really cool data about the G-forces and what the test device experienced during launch and docking and re-entry. However, as with all steps so far in our Demo 1 mission, our teams will be covering the full steps in the recovery process as if it were an actual crewed mission in order to prepare for our first time with NASA astronauts on board. You saw earlier that the recovery fast boats went very quickly to the splashdown point. Ghost Searcher, the main recovery vessel, followed along quickly, which you can see in your screen right now. Wow, it's a picture perfect day, so it's pretty great. So we're going to be watching as
coming in to give it a tow.
The recovery vessel gets closer to the Dragon capsule, and we'll be able to see it get lifted out of the ocean. That's a beautiful shot there. So our recovery crew has been already performed the safety checks that they do after splashdown. The vehicle itself safed itself as well as soon as it detected that it was in the water, and the team made sure it was safe to approach the Dragon spacecraft.
And then upon that immediate detection of landing, Dragon automatically released all of those main parachutes, and that just prevents the wind from catching them and potentially pulling or dragging the spacecraft across the water. And those parachutes also get recovered. Another one of the fast approach boats was tasked with that immediately after splashdown. Following that successful parachute cutaway, Dragon automatically saves any of the pyrotechnics still present on the vehicle, and it can also automatically perform a couple of additional minor system configurations. The astronauts, if they were on board, would remain seated. So Ripley obviously hasn't gotten up right now on the boat, but
she has not unbuckled her seatbelt yet.
She has not unbuckled her seatbelt yet. The astronauts, if they
seatbelt
were
sign
on
is
board,
still
would
on.
remain seated, and they stay in their suits at this point. But the Dragon spacecraft has air conditioning on board, and that helps keep the temperatures in check inside the spacecraft. And the communication system on board also remains powered, so the crew still has their two-way communication as they are just kind of sitting there in the capsule waiting for the teams to move in and pull them up on the boat.
If I were an astronaut inside the capsule right now, I would imagine this point to be kind of like when you're going through a car wash. You know, you're safe, you can talk, you're comfortable in your enclosed environment, but you can't open the door just yet.
There's a lot of water.
Yeah. Now, it took a little bit over 10 minutes for the recovery to complete their safety checks, and they completed their preparation activities. And right now, as we can see, they are making progress toward being able to lift Dragon up and onto the recovery vessel. As part of the preparation for this lift, we saw earlier that a member of the recovery team actually climbed on top of the capsule, and that was in order to attach the Dragon's hoist rings and connect the lifting line. So a lot of physical requirements for that particular role. I probably would not be able to do it. I'd fall right off most likely. But it's really cool to be able to see our recovery team who has been practicing live in action here with these beautiful shots from the Atlantic Ocean.
And it sounds like, in answer to our question earlier, it sounds like they're going to leave the astronauts on board and hoist them onto the ship, onto the Dragon nest, and then they get out. That's what it sounds like they were saying there.
And so for now, we're just going to continue getting these great views from the boats out there. This view is actually from one of the other vessels that traveled out to the recovery zone. This is from the Go Navigator and the combined NASA teams with a number of managers, flight docs, and other personnel that will be involved in kind of the game day operations when we have crew on board the spacecraft. They're on the Go Navigator.
So it seems like
we've mentioned before, the ship that you see there is fully equipped for medical checkouts. If we did have astronauts on board Dragon today, as soon as they egress from the side hatch, they would be taken into the medical quarters and given a medical examination just to make sure that everything is good and everyone's in good health. There's a helicopter pad on top of it. Additionally, due to unpredictable sea conditions, whenever we splash down, it might take the crew a couple days to get out and back from the splashdown point, and so the ship is also capable of housing the recovery crew for a couple of weeks, realistically, if absolutely necessary. Obviously, a long time to be on a ship, in my opinion, but it's fully equipped, and I've been on that ship myself, and it's just incredible to me as someone that keeps my eyes towards the sky and not necessarily, ocean sickness. It's just incredible to me that we're able to have a vessel like this in our fleet, really. When you think of the full encapsulation of what a mission requires, it's not just going up, it's coming back down and back onto land safely as well. And this vessel is a great example of how we're able to do that.
That's Gregorius had a good point here that the capsules stay on board the capsule at first because these are this is much different than like the Apollo days where astronauts would go up for a couple days and come back. These astronauts, not so much for the first couple of missions, but this is designed for astronauts that are going to go on board the space station, stay there for like 6 months, and then come back to Earth.
Just a little while ago,
they may need some assistance with their muscles and everything, getting used to gravity again.
Ships that have traveled out
it makes sense that they might stay in the capsule
splashdown zone.
Until they get on board.
One of the NASA personnel on board that ship is Shane Kimbrough, and he's actually the lead for all of the various NASA recovery teams and pretty much responsible for overseeing all the crew's needs and all their recovery, all their quarantine before launch. He likes to say I think he told us they kind of belong to him once they're in quarantine and getting ready. So he's actually joining us now via a satellite phone from that ship. Shane, thanks for calling in real quick. How's everything looking out there with Dragon Recovery?
Ship. That's kind of cool.
Hey Dan, great to talk to you from the Go Navigator. Everything's going really well. It was just beautiful seeing it come in on the drogues and then the main parachutes and then obviously the splashdown. You guys are probably seeing video now. The Go Searcher is getting pretty close to getting the capsule and getting it on deck.
And so, Shane, what was the trip out there like? I know we're kind of at a landing zone a little bit further away than when we have crew actually on board, but how's everything look so far?
Everything's been great. The crew's taken great care of us. It was about a 30-hour journey to get here to the splashdown zone, but we woke up this morning knowing we were only a couple hours away from all the action happening, so that was really cool, and now it's great to be involved in the recovery of Demo-1.
That's awesome to hear. It was one thing for us to be able to watch it from Mission Control. What was it like watching Dragon Splashdown with your own eyes, Shane?
Absolutely incredible. I mean, there's a lot of excitement building on the boat, the 30 minutes or so prior to entry. And then once, one person saw the drogues open, everybody's yelling and pointing and all excited. So it was really, really neat. And from our perspective, it looked absolutely perfect. So I'm not sure what the data will show otherwise, but it looked really amazing. We have a beautiful day out here, very calm seas, and couldn't ask for better weather.
And so, Shane, obviously you didn't come down in this capsule today, but you have come down in a capsule, but on land. What's this experience being out on the ocean been like? How does that really compare from when you touched down over in Kazakhstan?
Yeah, good question. As we're sitting here talking, it's been, 45, 50 minutes in splashdown, and I'm thinking, there's a crew in there, and that's a long time to be waiting to get picked up, so we'll tighten up that timeline a bit, just knowing the crew's probably not going to feel very well at this point. And the sooner we can get to them and get them on deck and then eventually back on land will help their recovery process.
All right, so we're continuing to get these views. What's kind of ahead for you and the rest of the teams? I know you said it's going to be about a 30-minute or a 30-hour boat ride back into harbor.
Yeah, that'll be probably about the same going back. I think we'll be out here another hour or so, maybe 2 hours, just getting everything situated, and the SpaceX team on Go Searcher, once they give us the go, then we'll start heading back to port. And we're supposed to arrive late Saturday night back into Port Canaveral.
All right, well, Shane, we'll let you get back to watching all the operations. I know you got a job to do other than talking to us, but I do really appreciate you calling in from all the way out there in Atlantic. It was a great splashdown, and we'll see you when you're back in Houston.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys, and enjoy the rest of the scenes out here as you're getting them from the Go Navigator. Take care.
All right. And that, again, that was NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough. He's out with the NASA teams who are on a boat watching as the Go Searcher gets a little bit closer. Looks like pretty soon they're going to start reeling that Dragon in, and we're going to get to see it go up onto the Dragon nest.
Yeah, so we should be coming up close. Looks like Ghost Searcher is getting up close. All the NASA crew.
So you saw a couple of seconds ago
and
the shot on your screen of the
Kimbrough
back
is on
of the
board
boat
Go
itself.
Navigator, the other ship.
That is the cradle that you saw.
From.
That's what we've been referring to as the nest. It's designed specifically for the Crew Dragon design, and that is exactly where once the lifting arms have lifted the capsule out of the water, and it'll place it back down in that spot. And then that is basically where, if there were astronauts on board, that is the position in which they would be egressing from out of the capsule. Looks like we're getting closer and closer to the capsule.
It should be in range
pretty
soon.
close now.
As we've talked about, it's expected to be about an hour or a little bit less post splashdown for the capsule to be back up on the boat. And as you kind of heard Shane talk about, really you just want to try and get the crew out of there and in a more stable environment as quickly as possible. And then you can actually start take the boat and start heading back into port. And if you missed some of the data earlier in the show, they are a little over 200 nautical miles out to sea right now, which is why we were hearing it's going to take them about 30 hours to come back in. Once we have crew on board, that's not going to be the case. They're going to be in much closer to land, within about 20 or 24 nautical miles, and so that gives you the option to be back at shore in just a couple of hours. But as Kate pointed out earlier, there is a helipad on that boat. So if for any reason they needed to get the crew back much quicker, they could actually airlift them out and then bring them right back to dry land there in Florida. But the gap continuing to close. It sounds like operations are definitely picking up here in SpaceX headquarters if you're starting to hear some of that.
What is happening at
Everything's
SpaceX?
looking great so far. We should have that Dragon on the boat in just a little bit.
A lot of noise happening at SpaceX. Somebody in the YouTube channel commented, can we turn off the background sound? That's not me. That's not my background sound. That's SpaceX. Their broadcast is done right outside their cafeteria, right above. Oh, hello. Let's get rid of the music there. And so the SpaceX broadcast is done right above their cafeteria, and also their production floor is right next to the cafeteria there. So a lot of sounds of basically the people working and eating at SpaceX. So I can't turn off that background sound. This is what it sounds like without that background sound. So yeah, that's not on my end. I wish I could turn that off. So, but yeah, it looks like they're going for the approach now. They're getting pretty close, and so that back section there, the big vertical structure, will actually actuate out. You can kind of see the hydraulic lift arms there on the side of the structure, but this is going to actually actuate out over the crew capsule. The Crew Dragon will lift it up and should place it on the Dragon nest there. That's that little circular structure. And it looks like they're going to pull that out of the water here any minute. It's supposed to be about an hour, 30 minutes to an hour after splashdown that they pull that out. We're 1 minute away from being an hour away, and so NASA astronaut Kimbrough, Shane Kimbrough said that they want to try to speed up that timeline because and I saw a couple other people commented. Was it? So Jr. and Michael Zumega over on the Periscope channel said the crew is going to be so seasick, which, yeah, it could be. You know, they spent all this time in space kind of just floating around, and now all of a sudden they're resting in their seats still in the ocean, bobbing around. So, yeah, maybe you could potentially get a little bit of seasickness there, I'm sure. But, yeah, they will lift that up and then take a 30-hour boat ride back. They would egress the capsule once they get it on board, it sounds like, and then they do a medical checkout, make sure that they're healthy and safe. You remember, this is something Gregorius pointed out a minute ago, which I totally forgot about. But this is planned for astronauts that will be coming back from the space station after a 6-month stay up there. So, they could potentially be. They're going to have muscle deterioration, may need a little bit of time getting used to Earth's gravity again, especially after a 6-month stay at the space station. So they're not in a huge hurry to get them out of the capsule necessarily while it's on the water. I mean, they do want to get them out quickly so they're not just sitting around. Oh, did you just throw a line over there? Is that what I just saw? So they're not in a huge hurry to get them out while it's while it's in the water, but they do want to try to get them out quickly by getting it on the ship as fast as possible, and then get them out there. So it looks like they are very, very close. I think that crew member just threw a line over. I kind of saw it out of the corner of my eye while I was chatting. So it looks like he's going to do, they got a couple of rope lines there. Not sure what, throw another one here, maybe. We're getting a little bit of pixelation that's coming directly from the SpaceX feed. Oh, you can see the vertical structure there now kind of actuating out over the top of the Crew Dragon capsule. And then this is Go Searcher, the support ship, should attach right to the capsule, pull it out of the water, set it on the dragon's nest there. And so anyways, what I was going to say, they'll get the crew out. When they have crew on board, they would get the crew out, check them out medically, and then about a 30-hour trip, like they said, back to land. They do have the helipad there in case somebody's got some sort of medical emergency and needs to get back to land much faster than that. So let's see. Oh, and somebody earlier in the comments asked about, what do they do if there's bad weather or bad seas? They would just wait that out in orbit. They wouldn't even deorbit, because from the deorbit burn to splashdown is only about 45 minutes. So if there's bad weather or bad seas, they just won't run the deorbit burn. And likely they can predict that pretty far in advance, meaning a couple hours in advance. So they may not even undock from the station. If there's bad weather, they would just wait it out at the space station and delay the undocking for, a couple hours or a couple of days or whatever it takes. But yeah, they won't come back. They won't even deorbit if there's bad weather or bad seas. They would wait that out until it's safe, because there's a lot of operations that have to go on here, and it's definitely going to make it easier to do if it's good weather and calm seas. Because you can see, the fast approach boat's got to do a lot of work. Got to attach the lift ring to the capsule so that the ship can actually be hoisted out of the water. And then, you got these crew members that are standing on the back of the deck that are waiting to receive the Crew Dragon. So a lot of stuff going on. And if it was terrible weather or bad sea conditions, you could see where that could be a bad day for those guys. Yeah, we should hopefully be minutes away. It's hard to tell what's going on here, but let's see. So N. Perigo is talking about the Soyuz returns, how they sit in the lawn chairs after they get out, which is, that's also true.
Water as they're getting ready to bring that Dragon spacecraft up into the on-deck translation system that SpaceX decided to call the Nest. And Dragon's going to remain in that nest during its journey back to the coast, where it's going to arrive at Port Canaveral, Florida. And we're expecting that to take about 30 hours or so. For this mission, it'll take them that long to make their way back because they're a little over 200 nautical miles out to sea. But for crewed missions, as we've said, the landing zone's only going to be a couple hours ride away from port. And that's just so SpaceX can quickly get those returning astronauts back to dry land, where things are a little bit stable. And after you've been in microgravity for about 6 months, your feet will probably appreciate that. The capsule pretty soon, though, is going to get lifted and set into that nest, and then they're going to center and orient the vehicle. And then Dragon will eventually get translated into the hangar aboard the ship so that the teams can open up the hatch. And for missions with astronauts aboard, we're almost at the point where the recovery teams would be assisting the crew to get out of Dragon. So we're almost there. That would happen shortly after they get back onto the ship. In aerospace terms, we call that the crew's egress from the spacecraft. And under the typical circumstances, the SpaceX recovery team is going to be helping out the crew of Dragon within 1 hour of landing.
Yeah, so you can see on your screen there, Dragon is getting closer and closer to the back end of the recovery ship. Just a minute or two ago, we saw the crew member that was responsible for attaching all the appropriate rigging to the vessel jump off the capsule and back into the water. Right now we're just waiting for Dragon to lift up and out of the water and into the nest.
They're pulling it in pretty much right now. What's
So they're
right
facing
now?
us is what we call the side hatch. And that is where, as Dan just mentioned, the astronauts would, if we had astronauts on board today,
it's out of
where
the water
they would
now.
be exiting.
Looks like it's out of the water.
The top hatch is what we
actuating
use
back.
to connect to the ISS, and that is currently hidden underneath the nose cone. But like we said, astronauts will be coming out of the side hatch. Yeah, and we got a beautiful shot there.
Cool.
Now the hydraulic lift is coming back towards us, and it is preparing to lower the Dragon capsule into its nest.
Oh, now it's going to actuate forward a little bit to get it over the Dragon nest. And then we'll just set it down nice
Like
and
we said,
gently
we
there.
are treating this demonstration mission
like that.
with the
A little bit of
recovery
seawater
operations as
coming
if
in
there
from
were
the
actual astronauts on
parachute
board.
bay.
And of course, before we would be able to open the hatch, we would have to make sure that the spacecraft cabin pressure is equalized with the outside environment before doing so. So once Dragon is seated, and you can hear some cheers behind me as the remaining folks that we have here on the SpaceX team outside of Mission Control are cheering with the placement of Dragon into the nest there, as you can see. You might also notice that the thermal protective system that we have on the outside of Dragon, if you were watching during launch, was a pristine white. Of course, upon re-entry, like we mentioned before, there was plasma, of course, as it re-entered through Earth's atmosphere. So we have a lovely toasted marshmallow there sitting in the nest of our recovery ship, which is, I just think it's such a cool view now that we're bringing the Dragon down, and we are obviously recovering our rockets, and it's just really cool to see that evidence of return back to Earth is really wonderful.
Yeah, and we had fantastic luck with the weather today. The sea states were relatively calm by all reports, only a couple of clouds dotting the sky. Had great views of Dragon all the way down under its parachutes, even before its parachutes. We saw it just after that entry interface, and we were getting some really cool views from the WB-57 airplane. But with Dragon back on the boat, that's about it for us. We're just now at about the end of this mission. So at this point, as we had talked about, the recovery personnel would assist in the astronauts getting out of Dragon, and those medical teams would be standing by, and there's medical evaluation rooms on board. But no people on board. Ripley won't need a medical exam, but they will be getting all of the data back from the sensors placed around Ripley, that anthropomorphic test device. On board, as they get all of the different G-forces that Dragon was exposed to, the sound environment, everything that the crew would experience, Ripley just experienced. But this mission started just about 6 days ago with that early morning launch on March 2nd. We had a successful approach and docking to the International Space Station, did all of the demonstrations as expected for the mission. It was docked for the last 5 days. They tested Dragon's communications and power systems with the space station. They unloaded about 400 pounds of cargo and loaded 300 pounds of cargo back on. We had that undocking just a couple of hours ago, a successful re-entry, 4 great parachutes, and a splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean at 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time, 5:45 a.m. for us over here on the Pacific Coast. So it was really a fantastic mission. It's been a huge honor for me to be out here at Hawthorne to share this with everybody and to share it with my SpaceX counterparts out here. A successful mission, the first successful test flight of NASA's Commercial Crew Program to the International Space Station.
Yeah. So as Dan said, it's been an incredible honor to share this mission with the public. All the teams are incredibly thrilled with the success of this demonstration mission, which of course paves the way for our first crewed flight later this year. Be sure to follow along with SpaceX and NASA on our social media for updates and next steps on the Commercial Crew Program. Until next time, see you then.
Forgot to turn my mic back up. All right, so there it is. That's pretty much going to be the end of their webcast there. Look at the Go Searcher vehicle from the Go Navigator ship. I think I said vehicle ship. I mean, the Go Searcher ship carrying the Crew Dragon in the Dragon's nest. This view coming from Go Navigator, which is the other support ship out there, but it is on board. It's out of the ocean. Splashdown happened about an hour and 10 minutes ago, and now it's on board the ship. They're going to try to speed up that time frame a little bit once they actually have crew on board. But this is the first time they've done it, so they got to go through the procedures, make sure they know what's happening. But from the untrained eye here, it seems like everything went nearly flawlessly. It was fantastic. It was a beautiful morning here. I'm gonna replay a couple of the highlights here, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll see how far I should be able to go back far enough to actually replay some of the highlights. But yeah, it was a pretty amazing look this morning at the reentry and splashdown. We had undocking really early this morning, but it's been about just under 8 hours total from undocking all the way to being on board that ship here. And so there's the end of that. So anyways, looks like it's a fantastic mission. Just to recap a couple of things that NASA said, that nothing from the mission from launch to splashdown indicated that there was anything that would prevent them from moving forward with the commercial crew program, which is fantastic news. They also said that the NASA said that the Crew Dragon performed better than they expected, which is amazing. That's fantastic, because that means that now they're going to do that in-flight abort test in I think it's May timeframe that's scheduled for, and then come July is when they're targeting for crewed missions. And with NASA saying that there was nothing that happened on this mission that would prevent them from moving forward, it kind of means there were no major issues that they're going to have to reevaluate stuff. And for them to say that it performed better than expected means that the chances of them being on the closer side towards July are pretty good. I mean, that's a very tentative date. I mean, there's still opportunity for that to slip. A lot of people before this mission seemed to think that it would slip all the way out till fall time frame. They thought maybe July was a little ambitious and that it would slip out into the fall. But it seems like that with it performing better than expected, that July could be possible. Maybe you get a little bit of slippage to go out to August time frame, but hopefully sooner rather than later for the commercial crew program, as long as everything is safe. Obviously, you want to make sure it's safe and that things are buttoned down and nailed down before you start putting people and astronauts on board here. But it'll be great news for the commercial crew program, for SpaceX, for NASA, for U.S. astronauts to be able to launch again from U.S. soil. So what did you guys all think this morning? Let me know here in the comments section. If you haven't already, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, maybe throw some hearts over if you're watching on Periscope, or follow the channel there as well. But let me know what you guys thought of the mission here. We'll take a look at some replays here. It has been a longer morning, which has been, it's all right. You get some lulls in the action, but it has been fun to see, especially the actual splashdown and the parachutes and stuff like that opening, which we're gonna show replays of here in just a second here. But yeah, so far it was a great morning, which I absolutely loved. Let's see, first time, this is the first time for the Dragon capsule. Some people asking about it. Where did it come from? So it was docked at the International Space Station this morning, undocked at about 2:30 a.m. Eastern time. It's now 10 a.m. Eastern time. So about 7.5 hours ago is when it undocked. Hatch closed yesterday. It docked on Sunday morning, and it launched on Saturday morning. So it was just under a week from launch to recovery here. Let's see, what else did I miss here? Comment-wise, this is awesome. I can't agree more. That's amazing. 30 hours in a chair. So the 30 hours they were talking about. A couple of things. So the astronauts would be. They would be in the capsule that entire time they would stay in the capsule at splashdown all the way until it got hoisted onto the Dragon's nest on the ship. Then there would need to equalize pressure for inside the capsule and what's the outside ambient pressure is. So they would need to equalize the pressure in the capsule, and then they would be able to open the capsule, and the crew would be able to egress out of the capsule on board the ship. They may need some assistance doing that, because this is designed for astronauts that are coming back from a 6-month stay on the International Space Station. So theoretically, they may need a little bit of assistance getting out of the capsule after spending 6 months in microgravity, and now all of a sudden they're reintroduced to Earth gravity in a big hurry. So they may need some assistance with that, but then they would, be likely probably in quarantine for a little bit, maybe on the ship. I think they might have said that, but maybe not. They would have a 30-hour ride on board that ship back to land. They would be free to to start using their muscles, and they wouldn't have to sit inside the capsule for the entire 30 hours. They'd be able to get out. But they do have, if there was a medical emergency, they have that helipad on board. They could fly somebody back to Florida in a hurry if they needed to, because they're just off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. In case you forgot where that is, I mean, we can show you real quick where we were talking about here for where this all went down. So this was all happening. Just off the East Coast, off the coast. Wow, I keep saying coast. Off the coast of Florida and Georgia. It's really this purple area that we're talking about here. That's the recovery area. The orange area, that's where the booster landed, not too far away, which is kind of cool for when it actually launched. But the purple area is the recovery area, and the purple pin was the expected touchdown area. No word how close they came to that, but the purple area was the hazard area that they told ships to stay out of, planes to stay out of, and then it was supposed to splash down right where that purple pin is, and that's what we witnessed this morning from the actual reentry. So that's what we're talking about, and they could take a helicopter back. It doesn't even have to go back to Florida if it was like a crazy medical emergency. It could just go to whatever the closest place was that they needed to get somebody to. But they do have helicopter capabilities as well. Let's see. And N. Perry Go says it won't be 30 hours for actual crewed missions because they will only be 25 nautical miles offshore, says N. Perry Go, versus 200 for this demo. I think I do recall hearing that, actually, now that you mention it. So yeah, they kept it 200 nautical miles offshore because of the uncertainty with the first time that Crew Dragon was coming back. This is the first time they've done this in the real world. So yeah, good information there. Thanks for reminding me about that as well. But let's take a look. We'll look back at some of the highlights here. Let me see if I can pull it up. Let's see, how long ago was it here? All right, so we'll get first thing we're going to look at. This was our first view of the Crew Dragon. Let's see, I'm going to mute this here so that I can talk over it. But this was the first view of the Crew Dragon coming back through the reentry phase here. This is during the reentry heating. It's after the blackout period, so there is a little bit of a blackout period during the peak kind of heating and plasma buildup that's happening around the capsule. So this was after the blackout period. They had said that they had already acquired signal back from the Crew Dragon at this point. But you can see here the plasma trail that's coming off the back of it. You see that big bright spot. This is from a NASA high altitude airplane that was tracking the Crew Dragon and getting footage of it as it came back here. We saw this, so entry interface was about 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So this was about an hour and a half ago that entry interface happened. This was shortly after entry interface, maybe like 10 minutes after entry interface that we actually got this footage. And I probably ought to throw this little replay moniker up there so people don't get confused, because this is a replay footage here. Eagle Stores USA missed the Dragon getting pulled out of water. Well, we'll hang on for a minute. We'll get there. We're going to watch this footage here. We'll kind of skip around a little bit, and then we're going to show splashdown, parachutes coming back out. But yeah, this was you can see the plasma trail getting shorter and shorter as it slows down in the atmosphere. It's dissipating all that speed, all that heat. Bleeding off speed and heat like crazy, trying to get rid of all the energy that got inserted into the capsule during launch. To get it up, it was going 17,500 miles per hour while it was docked at the station. So crazy fast. And now it's got to come back and basically touch the water at around 15 miles per hour. So a lot of speed to bleed off there. Let's see. I saw somebody asked a question. Does Elon fund this? Does Elon fund this, or NASA? Or so this is because this is part of the Commercial Crew Program. This is it's a collaboration between NASA and SpaceX. But NASA is really the customer. They are paying for the Commercial Crew Program, so they're paying for a lot of the development that goes into the crew capsule system, and even some of the Falcon 9 development. But the Falcon 9 was kind of already an established platform here. They did have to upgrade the Falcon 9 and certify it for commercial crew flights. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of funding from NASA in order to launch crew on board the Falcon 9 rocket and the Crew Dragon. But it's actually SpaceX that's doing the operation. So the whole premise behind the Commercial Crew Program was to try to simplify the development process, speed up the development process, and lower the cost. So if NASA's doing the development and NASA's doing all the build and everything, kind of like what we see with the SLS, you end up. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of delays with SLS, and we see costs go way up. And that's because NASA's as a government agency, has to follow a lot of rules as far as like bidding out who's going to do development, who's going to do the subcontracting. They have to coordinate between a lot of different subcontractors because you might get one person that develops the engine and one person that develops the boosters. Here's our drogue parachutes coming out here now that we saw earlier. I'm gonna pause what I was just saying here for a second we'll come back to commercial crew philosophy in a second, but there's the drogue chutes that are out now. Capsule coming through the atmosphere, coming down, and then we'll see the mains come out in just a minute. Those drogues are not out for very long, and there we go. There's some color footage now from the ships down below. I believe this is footage from the support ships that was capturing these. And then you'll see the mains pop out here in any second. Those get pulled out by the drogue chutes there. Capsule comes in a little bit sideways just because of where the parachute attachment point is off to the side of the capsule. Remember, the docking port is up on top of the capsule. So there we go. There's the mains getting pulled out and deployed, and then they fully inflate. And that was just an amazing sight. I love watching those main parachutes get pulled out. It was absolutely fantastic. There they go. So yeah, it'll be splashing down here in just a second, and then we'll fast forward to the actual putting it on hoisting it onto the ship. So what I was saying with the Commercial Crew Program, NASA's got so much. It's a lot more complicated to develop it in-house with NASA to get all those subcontractors on the same page and bid out pricing and all that kind of stuff. It ends up causing a lot of delays, and a lot of times you get cost overruns. So the premise behind Commercial Crew was that they could contract out the entire crew delivery process to low Earth orbit, and then basically pay a private company to do that. Where traditionally in the private sector, it's a lot easier and faster to get things done because SpaceX is the one that coordinates who's developing what on the system. I mean, they have to deliver a certain system to NASA that can do a certain, meet certain criteria. But as far as who they want to pay or what subcontractors they want to use, or if they're going to do it all in-house, I mean, they can kind of control that process a lot more easily and speed the development along a lot faster than NASA could doing that in-house. So Commercial Crew is going to let these private companies do it, do the low Earth orbit, kind of the up and down missions to the International Space Station and back, while NASA focuses on kind of those long duration missions that that can get people to the moon and to Mars, and then they can really focus on that stuff and let the private companies do kind of our what is turned into our routine space flight. But I hate using the word routine. I just don't know what other word to use, because space flight in general is not usually routine, just because anything can happen at in space flight. So the moment you start thinking that things are routine, especially if you're involved on the engineering teams or the mission control teams or anything like that, the moment you start thinking things are routine, that's when something happens. So so that's why I hate using that term. But anyways, this was there's my spiel on commercial crew. Somebody had mentioned, this is a long time ago in the comments, somebody had mentioned why did so Jim Bridenstine, the NASA administrator, spoke shortly after Splashdown. Somebody said, well, why did Jim Bridenstine not mention the Starship or the BFR from SpaceX? Well, SpaceX is not really interested in that at the moment. There we go. There's Splashdown, the big Splashdown event, and that, I mean, everything went almost perfectly. And then you'll see that one parachute right in the center lands right on the crew capsule. They had to work to get that off of the crew capsule there, but there it goes, right on the crew capsule. And then it still amazes me, the engineering and the physics and the math and the calculations that had to go on board. Just getting it into launch and orbit and docking and reentry, I mean, all that's crazy physics and math and everything else. But also the physics and math, just for the recovery team to be at the landing spot at landing time is crazy and pretty amazing to me. So anyway, I don't know. I can't remember. I was saying something a minute ago, but I forgot what I was talking about. But so anyways, there was our Splashdown event. And then let's see if we could fast forward a little bit. See if we can get, let's see, at some point, I wanted to see if we could see the crewman climbing out. No, we can't. Let's see. There it is. All right, so then we'll fast forward here to this point. This is where they were actually pulling the Dragon capsule in after Splashdown. So Go Searcher, that's that support ship there, basically backs it up to the crew capsule. It was about an hour difference between Splashdown and the hoisting here, and so Go Searcher backs this up, connects. They have to connect some support rigging there to the crew capsule. Then they connect it here. That arm that's on the back that's lifting it right now kind of actuates forward and backwards. So right now it's actuated backwards. It's a hydraulic lift there, so it's right now it's kind of winching it in using the rope there and the rigging. Then it's out of the water there, and now you'll see that arm kind of actuate, the hydraulic arm actuate back to forward, and then kind of the normal position for it is straight up vertical, but it will it'll go past vertical and actuate forward to get the Dragon capsule into that little circle ring there at the bottom, which they call the Dragon's Nest, and that's where the Dragon capsule kind of sits and straps down for the ride home. And here it is coming in. They got to make sure that the side hatch there is actually pointed the right direction, so they can get the crew out, so the crew can egress onto the ship and not into the ocean. There you can see some ocean water that collected in the parachute bay there. That's the bay for the main, I believe it's the main parachutes that come out of that bay at the bottom there. And then there's a channel that goes up and around the door to the attachment point for the parachutes. But then there it is, set down on the Dragon's Nest and good to go. So there's a little replay of what we saw earlier. Let me know what you guys thought of it, because I thought it was pretty awesome. I'm hoping that you guys all thought it was pretty awesome as well. But Trip and Fool asked, what happened to the trip around the moon? Didn't someone pay a few million to go around the moon? Yeah, so Trip and Fool is talking about, that's Yusaka Maizawa, that's going to take, he's paid lots of money to take the BFR Starship around the moon on a SpaceX BFR, but that's not NASA related. That is That's just purely all SpaceX. That's a private SpaceX flights that they've commissioned for BFR to go around the moon. That's not scheduled until like, I think 2023 is the target date for that. So we got a long time before Yusaku Maezawa goes out and around the moon. Let's see. Somebody else. Do you think they actually went to the moon? Yes, I do think they actually went to the moon. I think if we didn't go to the moon, the Russians would have been the very first ones to call us out and say, "Hey, I don't think so," because they were very interested in being the first ones there themselves, and they would have been the first ones to scream foul if we didn't actually go to the moon. Along with a whole host of other reasons why I think we actually went to the moon, but that's my first reason on why we went to the moon. Let's see. They should do it again. I would love to see us go back to the moon. I do think, like Elon said the other day at the press conference, that we should have a permanent base on the moon. We should be doing a lot of science on the moon. It's just hard to. Jim Bridenstine talked about this, but you have to have this sense of purpose for the space program, and it's really, the space program, at least NASA's space program, has to be funded by public funds, and you have to keep the public interested in order for NASA to receive those funds and continue to fund it. So it's hard to convey that sense of purpose and explain to the public why we're sending humans to the moon. I mean, during the Apollo era, it was very easy to do that. It was very new. It was like, wow, look what we can do. We're going to beat the Russians to get there, all that kind of stuff. And then once we did it, they were like, all right, the general public was kind of like, all right, we did it. Now what? And now let's spend our money on something else. So that's kind of the tough thing, is just to convey how important the science is to be able to do on the moon, and to get us to Mars and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, in order to keep people interested, which keeps the money flowing, that's always been the difficult part. And SpaceX has done a really good job of kind of renewing that sense of purpose with their reusability and landing of their first stages. Making it exciting again. Which has been fantastic. It'll be exciting again too for Boeing as well with the CST-100 Starliner. I mean, don't count them out as well. I mean, that will be exciting as well. It's not going to be it's flying on an Atlas rocket, so it's not going to be a reusable first stage booster, but it's still a U.S. built capsule, brand new capsule. It's sending astronauts to orbit and back and recovering and all that kind of stuff. So that will also still be very, very exciting. Radio TV history says, stop feeding the troll. How similar will the early manned Dragon concepts with giant touchscreens be compared to the real deal? Very, very similar. I mean, the Dragon capsule really is, that's really what it looks like with the touchscreens and everything else. I mean, that is the real deal. Let's see if I can do this without my stream crashing. Last time I tried to switch over to this, my stream crashed. Hopefully it will not this time. There, it appears I'm still live. So this is Sunita Williams or Sunny Williams inside the Dragon capsule, actually using the touchscreen. This is it. This is what it really looks like. The Dragon capsule really has touchscreens. All the astronauts training on it have said that it's like flying an iPad. Which is I'm not sure if I like that terminology, but that's what they've said. But yeah, it's all these touchscreens. The gloves on the spacesuit are all touchscreen enabled, and then there are hard buttons in this little panel right here. This panel, there's a cover on it, but there are buttons, like actual physical buttons that you can push that are behind this cover here as well. And that panel extends even further behind the camera, which we can't see. But yeah, the whole touchscreen thing, that is. That's the real deal on the Crew Dragon capsule. Let's see. What else did I see for comments? Fat Dad Going Fit on Periscope says, will the salt water degrade the capsule integrity, or is Crew Dragon not intended to be reused? So I mean, that was an initial concern about Crew Dragon splashing down, was whether, you know, if they're going to reuse it, is salt water going to degrade it and things like that. They are going to refurbish those crew capsules and potentially use them for private flights, or like this capsule is going to be reused for the in-flight abort test coming up in May. They will not reuse the capsules for NASA crew. So NASA is always going to fly on brand new capsules. They don't want it. They don't want anything to do with the reused capsules. So NASA will always fly on new capsules, the NASA astronauts. But there's nothing to stop SpaceX for reusing those capsules for private citizens that commission flights on their own, which they can do. They have no plans for that yet, but they have no. Nothing scheduled, nothing in place for that yet, but Elon did say during the press conference that once they get up and running with commercial crew and they're feeling good about it, then they likely will start looking at private citizen flights. So that's potentially on the horizon. I say there's no plans for it. It's like kind of in the back of their mind, like, yeah, we might do that someday. No immediate plans, I should say, is kind of what's happening for that right now. So. But yeah, that's the real deal with the touchscreens and everything else. And you can see, so this was an early photo, and then the actual. So this was a photo from launch time of the actual crew capsule with Ripley on board, with the Space Kirby, the little Earth there. And then you can see all the control screens and stuff like that up in the top corner. And that, I believe the way that works is that the seats are actually move around inside the capsule. So the seats would move up so that you can get up to the control screens. The seats also move and reposition for reentry to get into a comfortable position for reentry. So a lot of seat movement happening inside the Crew Dragon. And N. Perry Go, yeah, there you go. N. Perry Go also said, I forgot about that. They did say that they could potentially reuse these Crew Dragon capsules for cargo resupply missions to the International Space Station. So they could just use them as base cargo resupply missions, put no astronauts on board, and just bring cargo up to the International Space Station. We still have the cargo Dragons available, but while you have all these all these different capsules available, you could start making use of them instead of just letting them sit there and go to waste. So yeah, a good point there for N. Perry Go. I forgot about that. What caused the blackout period on re-entry? So the blackout period is caused by plasma buildup that's on the outside of the capsule. So as you're plowing through the atmosphere, all that atmosphere starts to build up on the front side of the capsule where the heat shield is. Heat gets superheated and then flows around the outside of the capsule, and that causes plasma buildup that just flows around the outside of the capsule. And that plasma buildup prevents any radio signals or communication signals from being sent back to ground stations. In some instances, they can send radio signals backwards, upwards towards like iridium satellites or the space station or things like that. But generally, you can't send radio signals out the side or down towards Earth during that period. So that blackout signal is basically caused by all the atmosphere that's surrounding the capsule during that high-speed reentry as it's at the peak of its heating and pressure, or I guess I should, of that plasma buildup there. So that's what caused the blackout, the reentry blackout period. So yeah, see, Fat Dad Going Fit says he loves that new capsule smell. Yeah, NASA will always fly on new capsules, at least for the foreseeable future. Who knows? Maybe years from now they'll say, we'll go with the reused ones, save some money. Jim Jackson says, wasn't it more cost effective to use the shuttle? The space shuttle was actually really, really expensive to fly. Something like $1 billion per flight for the space shuttle. The space shuttle was really, really expensive. to fly. It was not intended to be really, really expensive. It was supposed to be it was reusable, but it was supposed to save on costs. But by the time they started launching them, landing the solid rocket boosters, refurbishing the boosters, refurbishing the shuttle, they always had, tiles that had to be fixed and all kinds of stuff that needed to be refurbished on the shuttles. And so it turned out that the shuttle became a very, very expensive vehicle to fly. And so the Crew Dragon and the Boeing Starliner are supposed to be, I forget what the numbers are exactly, but drastically less expensive per flight than the Space Shuttle was. Space Shuttle was a great step forward in reusability, and to kind of put the concept in our minds that, hey, maybe we don't take all this stuff that we're sending up and just break it into a million pieces every time. Maybe some of it we can recover and try to use it again. Theknert has a Dragon more space for crew than Soyuz? Yes, the Soyuz capsule can only carry 3 astronauts. The Dragon capsule can carry up to 7. The initial flights will only have seats for 4. So they can kind of change the seat configuration in the Dragon capsule. So on this flight here, they had 4 seats on board, and then there was cargo underneath where the other 3 seats would go. But they, only 4 seats on board this time. The DM-2 mission coming up in July will have 2 astronauts on board for testing purposes. Then the first operational mission for the Crew Dragon will have 4 astronauts on board, two NASA astronauts and 2 international astronauts that have yet to be named. So we'll have a total of 4 astronauts on board the first operational mission for the SpaceX Crew Dragon. That's still a little ways away. So when is the Arabsat 6A launch on the Falcon Heavy? So originally that was supposed to be this month in March, but last I heard that got pushed out to April here. So we may have some time before we see Falcon Heavy again. But yeah, we're all anxiously awaiting Falcon Heavy. Falcon Heavy is the next flight to take place on pad 39A at Cape Canaveral, Florida. There's a crane there. They got to do some pad preparations to switch it from Falcon 9 to Falcon Heavy. And those pad operations are underway. They started right after this launch happened on Saturday. This happened early Saturday morning. And then the pad preparations for the Falcon Heavy flight started pretty much right away on 39A. And so that'll be the next flight. Still a couple of weeks out though for Falcon Heavy. It'll be the next flight on 39A, but still a lot of weeks out for that. Unfortunately, I'm anxiously awaiting Falcon Heavy. It's been so long since the last Falcon Heavy. It's over a year since Falcon Heavy. I cannot wait for that. Let's see. I'm assuming that also this doesn't have propulsion capability to insert into lunar orbit and then do, assuming that's like a TLI, translunar injection. Is that what that is? Yeah. So the Crew Dragon capsule is intended as a low Earth orbit capsule here. So it does have its own propulsion capabilities. But not enough by itself to go to the moon and back. Theoretically, what they were originally going to try to do was put the Crew Dragon on top of a Falcon Heavy and send it to the moon. They've kind of canceled those plans, and they're not going to use Falcon Heavy for lunar missions. They're instead going to focus on the BFR Starship to go to the moon or to Mars. But originally, they wanted to put this Crew Dragon on top of Falcon Heavy and use that to get it to the moon and back, so that they could use the upper stage really for the translunar injection, for the extra propulsion there. And then they were just going to go around the moon and come back, basically free return trajectory, and then come back and do the same deorbit basically that we saw today. A little more speed they'd have to bleed off, but same kind of idea. Yeah, and I think. Somebody says they see sharks in the water. I don't think. Oh, maybe, I don't know. Who knows? I saw something in the pixelation here, but yeah, I don't think we saw any sharks. Hopefully not. Hate to be out there. if there's sharks swimming around, but so I think that's pretty much. Oh, Starlink, Gregorius brought up. Starlink is coming up as well. That's the SpaceX internet service provider satellite constellation that is actually scheduled to launch more operational satellites this year for the Starlink constellation. So that's also coming up this year as well. We got a lot of stuff coming up. It's an exciting year for space flights. We don't, at least on the manifest, there's not as many SpaceX flights scheduled for this year, but the ones that are scheduled are really exciting. And that manifest could still change going throughout the year. I mean, last year, it's hard to beat last year. Last year was a big year with 20 SpaceX flights. That was a huge year last year. So this year, not as many flights on the manifest as of right now, but a lot of exciting ones. We got 2 Falcon Heavy flights scheduled. We've got Starlink flights scheduled. We've got in-flight aborts scheduled. We've got crew missions scheduled. So a whole assortment of excitement in the spaceflight world here today for SpaceX. Plus, you also got the Boeing missions that are going up, the Boeing tests, the Boeing the crewed missions for that as well. So lots still happening this year. All right, well, I think we replayed a lot this morning, and I think I'm going to wrap things up here now. We've been live now for about 3 hours. It was a fun time. We had a little bit of a technical glitch early on in the first half an hour. I hate when that happens. But it is what it is. We push on and do the best that we can with the tools that we have available. So Junior says, in my opinion, landing on land will probably be more pleasant for the astronauts. Yeah, it could have potentially been a little bit softer to land on land, but there's a lot more complications with landing on land, and NASA was not interested in going that route, or at least NASA wanted more verification or more proof or more involved solid evidence that was going to be a safe method. And it was a lot easier and less expensive for SpaceX to go the parachute route to get them to certified for crewed mission. So that's why they didn't go with the propulsive landings. But I said at the beginning of the show, and it would be interesting to find out if something happened with the parachutes, is there some kind of backup software in there to run the Super Draco engines to do a propulsive landing in the event that something wrong happens? I would think no. Only because there's so many parachutes, there's 4 parachutes on board, that a lot of redundancies in place. Originally they had 3 parachutes on board, but they added a 4th for redundancy, even more redundancy. And so I would think no, that they don't even have that in place. But somebody brought that up earlier this week about that. So, and Perry Ghost says, thanks for actually getting my name right. So, well, I'm glad I got it. I don't usually get that, but we're glad we got that on the first try. Let's see, what else? Anything else before we wrap up? Is it possible that the Dragon will ever land on land? Oh yeah, so that was what we were kind of talking about. I don't think you're going to see it land on land for any of the for the foreseeable future, really. I think they pretty much stopped development on that once they realized that it was going to be so hard to get NASA certification. They pretty much stopped development on that, and they're just going to focus right on the water landing. That's what they're going to do for NASA missions, and it doesn't really make sense for them to allocate resources and recovery teams and tests on a landing on land when they have to land on water for the NASA missions anyways. So they'll probably just, even if they do private citizen flights, they'll probably stick with the water landings. So there it is. So Trip and Fool wants to know, are they using a different type of heat shield than the usual heat shield? I don't think so. I think it's just kind of an ablative heat shield, but I don't necessarily know the exact specifics on the heat shield specifically. If anybody knows, feel free to let us know here in the comments. But I believe it's just kind of your typical ablative heat shield. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what's in place for the heat shield. Let's see. I think I got to all of them. Hopefully I didn't miss any comments. Fat Dad Going Fit says the Dragon capsule is a minivan for low Earth orbit. Yeah, essentially, you fit a lot of people into it, and it's hopefully going to be reliable. Get your astronauts into orbit, get them back. It's like taking the family on a family vacation in the minivan. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us. I think we had a good morning here. That also wraps it up for the SpaceX DM-1 mission is now concluded. Successful launch, successful docking, successful undocking, successful deorbit, successful reentry, successful splashdown, successful recovery. Yeah, everything was good. Seems pretty much flawless, which is fantastic. Green light for the commercial crew program. The big thing that they're going to have to consider now, or the two big things that they'll need to consider that we still don't know, is one, how did the vehicle perform during reentry? Was there any sort of issues during reentry caused by the kind of the cowlings on the Super Draco engines, because they're not symmetrical and they're kind of irregularly shaped? They were concerned that might cause some irregularities during the reentry phase. Has that happened? We don't know. It doesn't appear that anything major has happened, but is there anything minor that caused like severe vibrations or severe sound, something deafening to the astronauts? Who knows? We don't know that yet. So they'll have to analyze the reentry and see what happened there. From the appearance, it seemed like everything was good to go. And then the other thing that they will need to evaluate as well is how did Ripley perform? What kind of G-forces, acceleration, vibrations, sounds did Ripley experience during the ascent phase, also during the re-entry and splashdown phases? Got to evaluate all that from Ripley as well and see how all that performs. So that's still to be determined, but I'm sure we'll find out from SpaceX in the coming days here. So yeah, greetings from the Netherlands. So hello, Netherlands. Thanks, Tori, for doing this for everyone. Hanging on, participating. Alex Ziggyful says, like the video. Yeah, definitely throw a like on the video. Maybe subscribe to the channel. Throw some hearts over on the Periscope or follow us along there if you're watching there as well. Because we had some fun and we got more news coming up. We got more space flights and our flights coming up. Our weather balloon flights coming up probably in about a month from now. We'll be looking at our weather balloon flights coming up faster than I like, because I'm not sure if we're prepared for it, but our weather balloon flights are coming up very soon, and so we'll have some of our computers and cameras going up to the edge of space and back, and then you can watch us do our recovery, which is not nearly as high tech as what SpaceX and NASA are doing, but still has a lot of fun stories, and you can watch me trudging through the woods trying to pull a styrofoam box out of a tree that just went to the edge of space and back. Oh God, those are the worst. Hopefully we don't have too many tree landings this year. We had way too many tree landings last year. Hopefully they're all just open field landings. Those are the best. All right, so that's it. Subscribe and like and stick around, and you'll see some of that coming from us later this year, probably in about a month from now. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. That's been our morning. That's the end of the DM-1 mission for SpaceX. Looks to be nearly flawless as far as I can tell. Hopefully that's what they report out here in the coming days. So that's it. My name's Tori. This is Overlook Horizon. Thanks for joining us here. It was a lot of fun. Oh yeah, Tori's launching the Parker Solar Pro beach ball. Yeah, we're going to throw one of those beach balls. I don't think I have one nearby me at the moment, but one of those beach balls we're going to try to launch on a weather balloon later this year. We'll see how that hangs out, and we're going to run a contest, and you might actually win the beach ball that goes to space, or the edge of space at least. So stick around for that. Subscribe, and you'll see that happen later this year. You can see our beach ball that we send up to the edge of space and back, and we got some other stuff planned as well. We're going to send all kinds of space stuff up to space. We got some student projects that are going up. We got some seeds that are going up. We've got some student experiments, a couple other things that we got in the works that may happen this year, might not be till next year, but we'll see. But anyways, yeah, a lot going on in our world here too for some weather balloon flights. So there it is, everybody. I'm going to wrap it up here for today. My name's Tori. This is Overlook Horizon. Thanks for joining us this morning. We will see you on the next SpaceX broadcast. Probably the next one that we do will be the next SpaceX mission. But follow us along on the Twitter machine for what's coming up next, because whatever we have coming up next for for any of our live broadcasts will be coming up on the Twitter machine. I just like saying Twitter machine. Makes me sound like I'm out of touch, but I feel like I know how to use it. I know how it works, right? You type the letters and you push the tweeter button, and it comes out on it comes to you. It comes to all you on your tweeter machines. All right. That's it. We had some fun. Now it's getting late and we're getting silly. All right. Thanks everybody. Everybody have a good rest of the day. Happy Friday to you. And we'll see you on the next stream. All right. Take care, everybody. Goodbye. See ya.